this would be my second day in front of you guys, and I feel honored that you're here. I've got Travis Gribble, and I got Greg Grogan. You guys, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here, man. Glad to be here in person with you for sure.
Yeah, I feel blessed. It's been a long time. I actually have seen Greg a couple of times in the last couple of months for a couple of different occasions. So it's always good to see my friends. But the fact that I get to have you both here in the studio today, Travis, you're in from Montana,
Phillipsburg, Montana.
That's
small town.
It's a long way from San Jose, California.
Yeah. Yep. It is.
And and you brought your crew with you.
We did.
You got Taylor's in the house, and now we got a combined team for the Overwatch Collective and the Iron Sights podcast with Eli from 8482 Media. So there's a lot going on this week, and I bet everybody's tired. So in some way, but at the same time, there's such an important message that you guys have been spreading, and this is an opportunity for me to revisit that message for the audience and beyond, but also hear from you. Straight from the horse's mouth, Travis. I've heard a bit of your story. I became familiar with you. I want to say now it's been probably a year and a half, maybe. Would that be right?
Yeah, about a year and a half.
About a year and a half ago. And that was after I had been introduced to Greg and the things the Overwatch Collective was doing. And so when I heard it, I had already kind of had some sense of the things that you were going through and the things that you talk about. So when there was another interesting kind of connection point, and that was a friend of mine who's active military had contact with you through a training event at some point, which I didn't know, but he asked me, based on the conversations that he had heard me have with the Overwatch guys, hey, have you heard of this guy, Travis? I go, I haven't heard of him. I just listened to this podcast, that he was on Andy Stump, the Cleared Hot podcast. And I go, it was very compelling. He goes, well, I know what you're doing, trying to help with first responder, mental health awareness, suicide prevention. You should be connected with this guy. And then weirdly, like all of a sudden, Overwatch and Travis are connected. And now here we are all sitting at the table together. So that's kind of my very long story about how this even happened today. I want to shut up and let you talk, Travis, a little bit just about who you are and where you're coming from and why we're even here at the table today.
Right. First of all, thank you so much. It is funny. I know you and I talked yesterday about the community is very small, I guess, in this world of what we're doing. And it's super impactful for people like you that are not necessarily law enforcement, military, but you have a passion for what it is we do, and we need that voice, so we appreciate that. But yeah, Travis Gribble, 24 years in law enforcement, retired in 2022. I did 11 years in Michigan, that's where I grew up, started my law enforcement career there in 1996, and worked for a very small agency, 15 people on the road when I left, ultimately to lateral to Mesa, Arizona, but worked in a rural farming community, did the whole, law enforcement from taking on, from the beginning of the case, you do everything. You're doing the whole scene to the end, doing that kind of stuff. It was really good background, just learning how to deal with people and all that. And then ultimately, I'd already had kind of the SWAT itch in me because we had some small team. It wasn't really a SWAT team back in Michigan, regional thing that was more like a containment team to hold down the fort if things went south until the state police SWAT team could get there. So I'd always wanted to work for a big city and maybe get with a large city SWAT team. So I looked all over the country. In 2007-ish, I started looking and found Mesa, Arizona. Ultimately lateraled there across the country with my family at the time and ended up going to a department, had about 850 sworn, 530,000 people. So a big
different ball game.
Law enforcement in general, any place you go, we can all talk the talk. We'll understand the language. It's just all based on like call volume, what kind of, maybe some more violent stuff you handle in the big city. So it was good. Yeah, I made that jump.
So wait, time out. What are you saying? The job is pretty much the same.
Pretty much
it's
the same.
Just the intensity, volume, frequency of what you're doing.
Correct.
Goes up in a bigger city like that.
Yeah, for sure. Like going from the small town, of course we had a homicide every once in a while, drugs all over the place, but not coming in on shift at the big city and there's 15 calls holding for you, 20 calls holding.
And there's all of that in there.
Yeah, you're just trying to get through the board. Yeah. Plus dealing with the in-progress violent crimes as you're rolling through your night. That kind of stuff. So
was it culture shock?
It was.
But it's what you wanted.
It was what I wanted. And you know what? It was funny, man. Like, you get to the big city and you have everything. I have crime scene. I have detectives I turn everything over to. I have motor squad that handles all the DUIs. And you'd hear guys that's all they ever knew bitching about the littlest things. They're like, man, this sucks. Crime scene sucks. I'm like, man, you have no idea how good we have it here. Like, I used to have to do everything, dust fingerprints, all that stuff. And now I hand it off. Yeah, call crime scene for this. And then like, you do your original report and you're out to the next.
Right.
So I think that part was huge for me, going from small to large. And I've actually heard that it's harder. Some people in Montana have come from some of the big cities after all the stuff that happened across the country. They wanted out of big cities. So like, hey, we're going to go, we still want to be law enforcement. We want to go someplace where maybe we feel more welcome. So they come to Montana, to a smaller agency. Very difficult transition.
I can't imagine.
So, because less training, less call volume, and it's kind of like, okay, I'm still a cop, but it's definitely a little bit different. So
I think the most people or most cops could probably relate. The one thing I wanted to go back to was just kind of, was this something you always wanted to do? I mean, was being a cop, like, was that on the agenda, or is this something you landed in? I'm always curious to know how people got here.
So obviously I know with Greg, like family law enforcement, all that, I did not have that.
Okay.
But I always, if you would ask my mom, she would say, you were definitely always a law and order kid, definitely black and white.
Justice.
Justice. You wanted justice. But I had a fortunate thing. My parents had, well, not this part, but my parents were divorced. My mom and I ended up getting an apartment. And in that apartment complex, there was a young cop that I would see his patrol car come home. He was coming home for dinner. And ultimately, we struck up a conversation. And he's like, hey, man, why don't you come do a ride along with us sometime? I did it, and I was hooked that first night. And it wasn't even that big a deal. It's not a large agency. I specifically remember we had a drunk driving arrest, had a couple DVs. We got to drive fast. And so as an 18-year-old kid, you're like, hell yeah.
It's a lot more exciting than anything I've got.
Right.
Prospects I've got.
Exactly. Yeah. So, back then it was like 18-year-old kids in my area, like everyone wanted to go work for General Motors because you got paid a lot of money, good retirement pension, all this. But like, I'm not working in a fucking factory my whole life. That was not me. That's good for some people. But so I was hooked, man. And so, yeah, he mentored me. I ended up doing an internship there. And ultimately, that was how I got my start.
Actually makes a lot of sense. And I think a lot of guys listening could probably relate to that too, which is much different than Greg's story.
Yeah.
Family, everybody's serving.
Yeah, I think I came out of the womb knowing I was going to be a cop and in the military. So it's different, but we can get into it later. But it's interesting to think that you go and run right along and you don't experience the traumatic calls, the paperwork, all the behind the scenes stuff. And you're like, I'm hooked right away because all the bad stuff is not on the recruitment flyers.
Correct.
Right. They don't tell you that when you sign up. Yeah. That wasn't part of the ride along.
Not part of the ride along. It's funny, man. I had, where are we doing it? We did one of our events for Tucson Tactical. So all their SWAT team, hostage negotiators, all this stuff. They were buying into everything. They believe in, what we're going to talk about, mental health, wellness. But I had a team leader, super senior guy. And he said, hey, man, I just got to ask you an honest question. Because, I preach we need to start from the beginning, teaching these kids to prepare. He said, do you think it's going to hurt recruitment if we're honest with them? I said, you know what? That's an important question. I never heard it, but I was ready to answer it. I said, you know what? I can see where an administrator or chief might have that. However, by us not doing, you literally are just admitting right now, we're not telling the truth about what's coming. And it's okay. My belief is if we tell you what's coming, that's good. But we also on the backside, we're going to tell you how to prepare for it.
Yeah, you have a responsibility.
You know what I'm saying? Right. It's a responsibility.
By not admitting it, then you don't have to admit responsibility or take it.
Exactly. Yeah. So, it kind of goes along. You hear stuff from the military about, oh yeah, the recruiter fucking lied to me to get me here and there. You hear those stories all the time.
Did he though?
Yeah.
Or did he just not give you all the information?
Yeah. Was he, wasn't being truthful by not telling you whatever it was, but it's kind of along that line. Like, yeah, we need everyone to do this job. Maybe we're going to tell you about this cool stuff. Maybe we'll tell you a little bit about the struggles. But yeah, let's just go do it and good luck.
I always try to be very objective as often as I can and kind of take a step back, maybe play the devil's advocate. But I would also say, like, if you're going to step into any kind of line of work, you should be doing your due diligence to ask the questions to understand what it is that you're getting yourself into. That's also taking responsibility. So I think it's a give and take there. And again, we're going to get into a lot of things today, but part of it will be about taking personal responsibility, but you also have to be aware of stuff. So let's kind of went through the career there very fast. There's a lot of things, and I think some of the things will come up in what we'll talk about today to give people a little bit better perspective there. But ultimately, there was quite a bit of time on a specialized unit. You're on the SWAT team there, which is a full-time unit at that particular agency that you were at for how long?
So, Mesa, Arizona. When I got there in 2008, I knew I wanted to test for the team, but I kept my mouth shut. I was mature enough in my career to know to not be that guy walking in like, I came here from Michigan to be a SWAT guy. Like, that does not go over well. You know what I mean?
Right,
gotcha. So I kept that quiet, but I started the way I worked it was I found out where all the SWAT guys were working on the street. Because at this time, the team was part-time. So I bid for that district. I bid for that shift. And so I became friends and started working that way. And then
solid strategy, Cotton.
Exactly, man. And I do think that comes with maturity, because when you're younger, like I've seen some young kids that have no plan, and they just there is a plan to do this stuff. And I was fortunate, man. I tested for the team, which was a big thing. I was 38 when I tested. So, I'm going against young kids in their mid-20s. So I was already very active in physical fitness, very active in keeping my personal firearms training up to date, all that kind of stuff. And it was a jump, but I ended up testing. I was invited to SWAT school. After SWAT school, they said, we'd like you to continue only in a probationary. That's what it is. It's like probation for a year. You have to go through hostage rescue school, start working operations with them. And the team ultimately has to unanimously vote if they're going to give you a pin. And so I made that. But a couple months in the probationary step, we had a team commander at the time. I described as having a lot of juice with the chiefs at that time. And we were a busy team. And so he pitched it like, hey, this is why we need them to go full time. Because quite honestly, the patrol commanders hated us because we were never on shift. If we showed up to work, we're usually getting called out.
Yeah, it's weird. Everybody's in a bad position there. They don't know what you're doing. You don't really know what they're doing, but you have an assignment. That's not a good setup.
It is difficult to serve two bosses.
I've seen that.
Yeah, it's very hard. So I think almost the patrol commanders are like, fuck it, take them. We want them off our books anyways, you know? Yeah. But we were all like, hell yeah. But one thing the team commander said to me, he's like, hey, Gribble, you're not off probation yet. I can't guarantee you. So if you come off patrol off this squad that you bid to, and we don't take you're fucked. Yeah. But I was like, hell no, I'm not giving up. Let's keep going. So I was fortunate, man. So I was only on a part-time team for a couple months there, and then ended up, I did 7 years or 6 years as an operator. I ultimately became an assistant team leader, which is something the department does not recognize, but our team does. And it's voted on by the team. So assistant team leader works directly with the team leader. You're given extra responsibilities. You sometimes plan the operations under the advisement of the team leader. So I got that, and then ultimately ended up promoting to sergeant. Had to go back to the street for a while and then make it back to team leader. Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's that whole journey does not happen overnight. A lot of things have to happen. A lot of things, good things, let's just say successes, failures, all the stuff in between. And, like I said, we're going to get into some other stuff. So I want to just take a little bit of a tangent here.
Let's do it.
And I think more of the career will come up, but so ultimately that ends, but then you get into what you're doing now. Mm-hmm. And so I think this is where we can sort of talk about what this collaboration between the Overwatch Collective and Travis Gribble, My Arena, and the things that you're doing, and what I was part of yesterday, which is the Be Here Tomorrow event, where it was you two guys teaming up with Jennifer Cooper, who's a licensed clinical therapist, who works with you guys and the things that you're doing, as well as many, many others. I understand this, but maybe we can somehow bring this together so people understand what it is that you're doing now and how this is all working, because and I'll prepare the audience that this is a super important message. Also, it's going to be very sobering. So just, kind of buckle your chin straps and settle in, and we'll take you down this little story. So how do you explain what you're doing?
Yeah, I can do that. So in general, mental health wellness is the road we're going down here in the first responder world. In our culture, generally across the country, mental health wellness, even though a department may have a program, whatever, the culture within inside the walls say, hey, suck it up. It's what you signed up for. If you can't handle that, maybe you've chosen the wrong profession. And it's just what we teach. And I was even one of those guys that preached that message. Like I would maybe see someone that had a problem with an officer involved shooting. They weren't handling it. They need some more time off. We're like, yep. First of all, if you're going to stay here, I never want you as my backup. Number two, you probably chose the wrong profession. You're going to get yourself or somebody else hurt, which is worse. So maybe you should rethink this, because that's what we taught. And even within our team at the time, like, yeah, we were a bunch of assholes about that stuff. We were like, yeah, fuck you if you can't take this. Like, what do you think you were going to be doing? And that is just the generalized culture. So that's what I lived until finally I could not stuff down any of the shit that I'd been through anymore, and was at a breaking point, to be quite honest with you. Suicidal, not gonna, nothing was working that I was doing. So, hey, I'm a problem solver. So this is a problem, and I'm going to solve it. And
you're going to muscle your way through it.
Yeah, for sure, man. Right. So ultimately I ended up taking a post-traumatic stress injury retirement. Had every intention. I had bought some property up in Montana. I was going to go bury my head up in the mountains. And quite honestly, a small town, 900 people, didn't want to see too many people, couldn't handle the big city anymore. And ultimately get asked to come do this speaking event for a tactical leadership conference in Kalispell through some, SWAT guys I knew from the national community. And they originally just wanted me to come talk about like a barricade we had, do a debrief. That's a big comment in our world, like slides, all this stuff, talk about what we did right. And yeah, I have tons of shit I can do for my team. But I had this thought to say, hey, what if I talk about what I went through? Because at this point, I had been through a shit ton of therapy. I understood what post-traumatic stress was, what post-traumatic stress disorder looked like, understood that like, no shit, you were experiencing this, and let me tell you why. Really, a punch in the face from a culturally competent therapist that knows what the fuck they're doing, which I had never experienced in my career. Never even heard that before of what the fuck does that mean? Yeah. So I call them back. They're like, yeah, man, let's do it. And so I went with this basic little PowerPoint, like nothing like you saw yesterday, and just kind of raw story, man. This is what happened to me. And these are the lessons learned, that things I did wrong. This is what you can do right to prevent yourself from getting to what at the point I was. And it went over pretty well. And things just kind of snowballed from there to where, yeah, it's how I got on Andy's podcast. That was super eventful. Kind of snowballed in the state of Montana to where we started doing these small agencies, and we get contracts with the Department of Corrections, whole departments, conferences. And then at the same time, also Bruin was the National Tactical Officers Association. I honestly don't even remember how the fuck they heard about me, or if someone gave my name. They're like,
that interesting.
Yeah, exactly. So they're like, hey, sure, come, let's try this. We've never done this. And we go and do that. And then it just started snowballing across the country. And we go from coast to coast now, different states, different agencies, different conferences. And it is, I still say it's very simple procedure to where I tell my story. I definitely give some specific calls that I went through, things I saw with my negative coping. And then in the state of Montana, I have two therapists. They work with me in the state. And then my former therapist, Jennifer Cooper, she travels outside the state of Montana with me. And what I think is super important about what she does is she gives the clinical side. So you're going to hear from Travis. Like if you're sitting across, you're a police officer, firefighter, you and I can relate to these calls, right? You'll know when I describe something like, yep, I had one like that, or I can definitely render that image in my head. And then you have the professional, being the therapist, says, this is why this was happening. This is how we prevent this from happening. And this is the kind of therapies that are available to you. What does this look like in a non-threatening manner to where these people that listen to us and when we talk, they're not one-on-one for their first time hearing this. They're like, okay, let me hear what this all looks like. And man, I tell you what, the biggest thing we see is like I have people come up on the breaks. They come up after, or if they don't have the courage to say it in front of other people, which is fine, you get an email, a text message, an Instagram message saying, dude, I just checked every fucking box you talked about.
Right.
Holy shit, I thought I was fucked up. And I was about, dude, this is what's amazing. We literally we did an agency in Montana, did the whole sheriff's department, corrections and everything. And this female corrections officer comes up to me and this one of the therapists, Gypsy Ray in Montana. And she says, my fiance is in a bad way. He works for the county as well. He'd actually made some poor decisions professionally and was getting investigated internally, just some IA shit. And she said, he's not good. Well, he just recently got connected with me and started seeing another therapist that we're linked up with. And I just talked to him last week and he goes, he said, dude, my fiance heard you on a Thursday. I was going to be with my daughter for 3 days after that. I was killing myself on Monday. And he's like, not now. So that's the kind of shit, like when they're like, this light bulb goes boom, to we're like, fuck, man, why have I never heard this before?
So that was my exact same experience to some extent when I had the Overwatch collective on, when I had Greg and Jesse on originally, and I had a few other officers that just kind of snowballed a bit, and there was a few law enforcement guys, some firefighters, and people had various different backgrounds and experiences. I never get more emails, DMs, messages on my episodes or on these episodes than I do from this type of conversation. So I want to go all the way back to what you were saying about the culture and it not being cool. And we don't acknowledge this. And it's worse. We know it's happening and we're not saying anything. We know it's happening. Not only we're not saying anything, but we're actually not doing anything. Yet the problem continues to get worse and we're watching it happen over and over and over again. And it blows me away, again, going back to all the way to the beginning, we don't talk about this, but that all of a sudden you do a podcast or you get randomly called to do a debrief on an incident. You talk about things for a few minutes and the next thing you know, you're traveling the country talking about the problem and the solutions that exist for the problem. I know you're not the only one doing that. Overwatch isn't the only one doing that, but you seem to have really gotten some roots here. Like you're dug in, and it seems to be reaching people in a much different way. And I want to unpack the reasons and the things that you're doing and the reasons why that's likely happening. And part of it is just that you're so willing to talk about it and just get out there and do it. But part of it also is that you're doing things like we're doing today, which is trying to connect with other people. You're not trying to do it all by yourself. Right. And same as Greg. I mean, the whole point of the Overwatch collective is to create this massive network to handle the problem, right? Like once you've identified it, then what do you do? Which I think we'll kind of talk about today. But acknowledging it being the first thing and bringing awareness to it, and then acknowledging it being the most important steps. Let's unpack a little bit of this. So, first off, I want to know, why would you, like, what was the thing that compelled you to finally, like when you got called to this conference in Montana, the first one, like, what was the thing that compelled you to basically ask the question, well, how would it be if I just talked about this? Like what was driving that?
Okay. Well, when I had made the decision ultimately that I was going to put in for this retirement, you know, my team was everything to me. These are my brothers that I've been with operating for years and years. And I had a lieutenant at the time and she said, hey, I'm going to tell the team, you don't have to do this. I don't want you to bear the weight of that. And I said, fuck no. It is my responsibility and they need to hear this from me. Because we just never talked about that kind of stuff on the team. We were the offenders in the department that we would talk shit. We were one of the, the elite teams.
You were the tip of the spear leading the charge.
So I felt it was important. So I go and I talked to my team and we were, man, I don't know. I think I had a little over an hour as on their full team training day. And I tell the story real brief overview. They knew about some of the calls that I'd been on. They're like, fuck, man, I didn't know, because I never wanted to burden other people with my shit. Now, people knew I was off work and they're like, man, I hope he's okay, but I didn't give a lot of details because I was still keeping everyone in arm's length, because you don't want to you still have that shame. Like, man, I'm failing here somehow. That's
weak.
Yeah, you're weak, and which that's not the case. Yes, less than. Because again, that's our culture, man. That's what we fucking preach to everybody. And so I went and told the team, and there was a couple guys that hung back, dudes that were fucking the elite of our team, like some of the best operators Mesa SWAT's ever had. And one of them specifically was my guy, and he hangs back. He's got tears in his eyes. Like, dude, I've never heard this. He says, who is Jennifer Cooper? Because I got some shit. The nightmares, the shit from calls, people's lives we had to take, that kind of stuff. And when I saw that, I was like, fuck, man, him too? Like, so it was already going in my head of like, maybe this is bigger than what I even understand. I knew what was happening to me, but still, I never talked to another warrior that had been through some shit and was willing to have that conversation. So when I got that phone call, something popped in my head, man, whatever you want to call, like if you divine intervention, whatever your beliefs are, I don't know. I'm like, fuck, maybe I should ask him if I can talk about this. Cause like, quite honestly, at that point, I'm like, I've done enough debriefs. Like, I don't want to talk about another hostage rescue, another barricade. There's still people operating. They got plenty of shit to tell. And I just threw it out there and they bit.
I mean, and again, here we are sitting at the table talking about it after, you're traveling around the country for the last year and a half or 2 years now doing the thing. Again, let's unpack a little bit of this, because I think we've just kind of set it up. And I think while the stories and some of the things that got us here today, or got you here today specifically, are really challenging to listen to, I think they're important to talk about. And so, and kind of go through the journey. And then as we go through the journey, like some of the things that you've already, sort of brought up and kind of highlighted as key things, maybe we can unpack those as we go and kind of get Greg's feedback about like, what is he seeing and how do we overcome this? But I don't know, man, like usually when we hear about this superheroes list, it's usually an accumulation. There's an analogy being used like the rucksack or the box. You're trying to stuff 10 pounds of shit into a 5-pound box, or you're constantly throwing these rocks, which are traumas, incidents, things into the rucksack, and it just keeps getting full, heavier and heavier and heavier, and until one day it's overwhelming and there's what could be referred to as a career incident. Right. And then things generally escalate, but man, the things have to almost get way worse before they end up getting better. And so maybe we kind of talk, I don't know, where do you want to start with this, man? And just kind of giving people some insight to what was going on for you and what happens and how does it happen? Because I think painting that clear picture, having heard where you are today, we've already talked about what you're doing now and how you've come out the other side. So it is possible. And you're living, breathing proof of that. Let's talk about how bad it was.
Right. Yeah, man. So again, these are new things that I've learned. That first time I ever spoke was in March of 2022 is when I did it. So, and through all the therapy, I learned the word cumulative. I knew that word, never had related it to what it is first responders do. And much like you heard me say yesterday, it's easy now. I look back in the rearview mirror and I'm like, no shit, that stuff piles up. From the small agency, from the suicides, the child deaths, the shootings, the on and on and on of chaos. 4+ shifts a week, whatever you're working, 8, 10s, 12s, I don't care. You're in and out of the chaos and you have nowhere to unpack it. So if you have nothing set up, you have no culturally competent therapist that you are checking in with, you are having regular visits with, like you said, the rucksack, the cup, the boat, bailing out, whatever you want to call it. I don't give a shit. It adds up. And we are taught, just keep pushing it down.
You're fine.
Yeah, you're fine. Grab a bottle, grab some more beer. You'll be okay. Just, it sucks. It's part of the job.
Just take a deep breath, man.
Yeah, man. Yeah, take a deep breath. Fuck, are you kidding? Like, that's, but that's the shit we say because it's what we're taught. And it just kept adding up. And as I look back, the death, the destruction, the calls. I'm not going to lie, being on a team like that to be good, you're all in, man. I mean, I don't care. I know there's like this messaging out there like, hey, have all these friends outside of law enforcement. Don't let it be your life. I always struggle with that because, man, to be good and to stay alive out on the streets or whatever you're doing, it kind of does become you. You know, most departments aren't training you enough. So some guys are training on their days off, which they probably should be. So you're constantly in this mindset and you're always pegged and you don't get a lot of downtime if you don't learn the tools and resources through someone that can teach you what needs to happen.
Yeah, there's a lot of things to do, man. And that's probably not on the priority list.
Correct. Yeah. And then, you know, you just keep going. And yeah, in 2016, you want me to go on this now? Yeah, man. So yeah, just so everyone knows, like, I mean, I already had a bunch of shit I had never dealt with. The closest I had ever got to any type of therapist is that when I got my officer involved shooting in 2005, had to go do the stupid fit for duty thing and sit there like, hey, are you sleeping okay? Yep. Are you drinking too much? Nope. And are you ready to go back to work? Yep.
So when you say the stupid fit for duty thing, you're saying the process and the evaluation in and of itself is, talk about it.
Yeah, man, it's terrible. Well, first of all, I hate that fucking term fit for duty because I get into a shooting to protect my life and the life of my partners. I'm doing everything that I was trained to do. And now you're sending me someplace to decide if I'm still good to go to continue. Like, just think about the mind fuck that happens with that just from the beginning. The stress that comes with that right away. After you've pulled the trigger, things are kind of calming down. You're already going down that road like, fuck, I'm going to have to go talk to somebody about this for me to get back to work. So I hate that terminology. But you know, that's been our culture. That's the only thing that would trigger a response that you're going to see. And I even hate to use the word therapist. It's usually a psychiatrist or something just sitting there. They're checking a box, man. It's liability, to be quite honest with you. You know, it's liability to get in front of them. They say, yep, this person can go back to work. So the department can say, well, they said.
They covered their ass.
Yeah, they're covering their ass. That was the only touch I had with anyone. Yeah. Gotcha. And it was like what people fucking watch on TV. Like the classic one is like Lethal Weapon or something like that, where the dude's chasing or the female's chasing that, you know, him down or like, oh, you got to come see me and all this shit. Like, it's literally kind of that whole feeling, you know?
So why would I want to go there if I was having a problem? If that was my experience when I wasn't having a problem, I needed to be helped and protected and whatever else at that point. Like, you did your job, right?
You just hit.
Again, that's not for whatever. Judge, jury has to decide all that bullshit. But at the same time, like, why would you want to go back to that?
And you are hitting on a good point. Because
I don't mean to cut you off, but specifically, given you already know what the culture's like.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you already know, like, if I go there, that's going to send up some red flags, right? I'm only here because I have to be.
Yes.
Right, in this case.
Yeah.
So, sorry.
Exactly. No, that's important because I think that does play into the whole overall culture. That's our association with it. So, yeah, so that was my only touch. The stuff was adding up. I mean, murders, suicides, DV after DV, whatever you want to say. Just the call after call after call after call, with no unpacking at all. My unpacking, and again, I'm a huge believer in fitness. I've always thankfully taken that, you know, very serious in my career. I think that kept me on my feet longer than I probably would have because I did have that release, but also was coping negatively by like, yeah, man, this sucky night, can't sleep, I'm drinking. I got to put my head on the pillow, something. Hopefully I'll, you know, go to sleep quicker. Whatever. And so I ended up promoting in 2016. Testing was in 2015. Get out to a training process where you're riding around with a training sergeant. My very first day in this program. And our first call out of the gate, we go to some call that some dude had met up with another guy in an apartment. They met on some online dating thing to meet for sex. When they get done with their deal, the guy that's in the apartment, he said, hey, I have a little girl if you're interested in that. And this dude that had went there was like, no, I'm not in. He left. Thank God he had somewhat of a conscience. Ends up calling 911. First, he wouldn't give his name or location or anything. So at first, when I heard the call, I'm like, this is some bullshit call, like someone trying to fuck with somebody. You know, they weren't giving me the info, which happens in the big city.
Oh, they're trying to mess with somebody they got an axe to grind with.
Exactly. Maybe it's another local street level drug dealer. Like, oh yeah, I want them to go knock on his apartment. They're going to fuck him over, you know, and get me more business. But ultimately, patrol guy ends up seeing someone in the area that's on the phone, tweaker type, kind of local drug traffic.
So this dude's just driving around in the
he's on
vicinity
patrol.
of where that call's coming in from.
Yep. And I don't even think he was assigned to the call, just to go get her. Like, hey, there's a shit bag. I'm going to go see what happens when I check out with him. And when he did, dispatch heard the bleed over on the call, and they're like, hey, that's our caller. So now we got him identified. And now the information, like, okay, here we go.
Starting to connect dots.
We're connecting, and I answered up for the call as a sergeant. So we went on scene, and there's a little bit of debate. If there was enough for us to go knock on the door even. And I was like, hell yeah, there is. Like, let me go knock on the door. I'll make a decision. And so I think because of my SWAT background, really, they're like, fuck it, Gribble, you're the SWAT guy. Take some patrol guys up there. Go see what happens.
Got it.
So we knock on the door, had a couple guys set up, and immediately the door opens up with this dude dressed in like a pink ballerina outfit and makeup on, just like this caller had described. So that was enough for me. Like, yeah, this is our deal.
Okay.
So I said, detain him. And they took a hold of him. He didn't fight or anything. And they get him handcuffed up, detained off to the side. And then we make announcements, seeing if anyone would come out to us. We're there searching for someone that could be in harm's way, a child.
Okay, time out for a second.
Yeah.
Had you ever been in this kind of a similar situation before?
Not for looking for a person like that. Now, have we done like someone's injured at this apartment, or there's drugs going on, something like that, where I've had to knock on the door and do something like this? Of course.
But not like somebody calls about a kid being potentially trafficked or something like that?
Not on a patrol call like this. Now, our team, when I was back as an operator assistant team leader, my squad specifically, like we took care of internet crimes against children. Okay. And much like I know people are listening, they hear about it in here, they do these sting operations. And so we'll go work, detectives are chatting up, playing like they're, underage girls. And we would go, and our team would be the ones taking these guys off. We would get a meet location. As soon as they arrive, boom, we're arresting them.
So this goes back to like, Gribble's done this a million times. Like if there's a guy that's going to do it.
Yeah.
And so you wind up at the front, and this is one of those calls.
Yeah. And I think it kind of comes from, he can lead the people to search the apartment, So
whatever. You're inside. What are you looking at?
Yeah. So when we go in, they two guys in front of me reach in. When I get in there, or they step in first, I get in behind them. I notice there's a closed door off to the side, and it's a piece of shit apartment. I mean, this is not a good area of Mesa. I mean, people can render images of just local drug scene, dirtiness, something we saw every day on patrol. So that wasn't out of the ordinary. And I saw a closed door, and I said, hey, I'm going to, obviously pistols are out. We're clearing the apartment. I said, I'm going to cover you guys. So literally meaning I put myself between the door and them as they're pushing through the apartment. I'm covering them. So if someone came out of that door, I've got them. Yeah. And so they pushed through, and they had nothing. They said, boss, we got nothing in here. So when they came back, I said, well, I have this door. Obviously, it was small, so it was something I pushed them off to the side, said, hey, just stay here. You'll be, if I need support. But I pistol out, opened it up with my left hand, and I start clearing what literally is a storage space rather than a closet. Like some of these apartments had like little 6-foot room storage areas to put boxes, whatever they fucking put in there. And it was just full of shit, like knee-high boxes, bags, just trash. The first time I scanned it, nothing stood out. For some reason, I'm going to rescan again, working my way like kind of a little grid pattern, just clearing this area. And a black trash bag stood out to me. And so I holstered, and I reached down to grab the bag. And when I did, a little girl's head popped up almost simultaneous. She was awake, but she had duct tape across her mouth. As I'm picking her up, the bag's falling off, overwhelmed by a smell. She's sitting in her own feces and urine, I later found out. And her hands are bound with gray duct tape.
Shitbag.
Yeah, and so are her ankles. So shocking. I mean, dude, I know that stuff goes on in this world.
You hadn't seen it at that.
I have never seen it. I have never smelled it. I've never touched it. I've never seen. I mean, this little girl, conscious. She had no emotion, even with the tape on her mouth. You can tell she's not trying to smile. She's not crying. She's just ice fucking cold. Which, when you think back to that, like fucking, what has she been through?
Yeah, God,
you know what I mean?
I mean,
yeah.
No, I don't know.
Yeah. So it's like,
it's awful.
In my initial reaction after we get the tape cut off, like I wanted to make this dude eat my gun. And I literally was thoughts racing through my head. How could I justify this and be okay?
I think I completely understand.
Yeah. And which I'd never had that feeling before. I dealt with a lot of shitbirds, never really took it personally, even getting in fights, being punched in the face, like, whatever, man, that's just business.
Yeah, how do you collect yourself in a moment like that, man? Where do you go?
Mentally, man, I fucking just went cold. I knew it was shocking everyone. I saw these were
So you got to push it down is what I just heard you say.
Yeah.
You have to push that shit
down, man. And this was no joke of a patrol squad. None of them had less than 20 years on patrol. And yeah, I saw dudes that like there wasn't much they had not seen. And you could see like, what the fuck did we just find? And so you go through the whole process, man. Like, again, major city, we're calling out a whole crime scene, a full detective squad. And you saw it every step of the way. The fire and medical that came in to get her right away, they were like, when they get in, they're like, what? And again, Mesa Fire is no slouch. Like, they see a lot of shit. And to see this and know what they just walked into, I mean, she was completely malnourished. It was horrible. And of course, you're trying to control the racing thoughts. Like, what the fuck's she been through? Who else is involved? Your mind's going 1,000 different directions. And so I take the case all the way through to even going to the hospital to be with the patrol officer that's going to stand by, because that was pretty standard practice when we have a victim that's going to the hospital. We're going to the hospital. Detectives are ultimately maybe going to do an interview, maybe see what the injuries are. Even remember an ER staff member that, again, Children's Hospital Trauma Unit in Mesa. No slouches.
Top notch.
Yeah. And one of the nurses come out. She's got to go in the bathroom. I hear her vomiting because she was assessing injuries and all that. And it was not good.
Everybody's losing their shit.
Everybody's losing their shit, man. And, but we were back to work the next day at 0600. And it's the thing we got was, hey, you good? Yep.
No
good.
Debrief. That's the debrief.
Well, we did get a debrief. But the debrief is in front of, I mean, when you work for a large PD and they're having everyone come to this debrief and it was mandatory, I didn't want to go. 3 days later, 2 days later, and I know people, I know faces, I'm not connected with them personally. And when it goes around like, well, who would like to share about what's going through their head? It's fucking crickets. Because that environment, it's not the place that you're probably going to get intimate. But dude, that's a check in the box for departments, unfortunately, where they're like, well, we did the fucking debrief and no one came forward, right?
Okay, hold on a second. So you go through this whole thing. You go to the hospital. You have to stay there with the victim while things are happening. While I assume there's an exam happening.
Yes.
You're probably learning and discovering things that had probably been racing through your mind. Now you can only make assumptions. Is she talking?
No, she was actually not auditory for, I think, if I remember right, 6 weeks after. So she wouldn't speak at all.
And then at what point did they cut you loose so you can leave that situation that night?
So I obviously had to make sure the report's being done correct because I'm now in the role of a sergeant, right? Making sure everyone's supplementals are done because you can't leave until all this is done. And then this was early on. So our shift started at 0600. I think the call was about 0730. So we got out on time, if I recall right. Obviously, I don't necessarily remember. I now have learned there's even, like I just went through, so it's called CISM training, critical incident stress management. We should at the very least had some sort of, they call diffusing situation then, where professionals that are trained come in and make sure like, all right, Travis, this is what you may be experiencing.
Yeah.
This is what the next few days looks like. Fucking none of it.
So I don't know if you remember this or not. When you leave that night to go home, what happens? Where are you? Like, where's your head?
Yeah. So this will touch a little bit on, not only do police officers deal with what's going on in the job, you have personal lives. I had been through a divorce in 2015. I was in an apartment. I'd have my boys a week on, a week off. And I didn't have them that night.
You were going home to an empty house.
I went home to an empty apartment. Place I'm not familiar with really. It's not home, but it's where I'm fucking laying my head because this is what happens when you get divorced.
It's the place.
Yeah. And I remember drinking because I was just, not okay. And I knew, at this point in my career, I'd always like, man, what else? Like, I think I've seen everything. Like, what do you want to throw at me that's going to fucking get me spun up. And this, I knew, what the hell? Like, I felt it different in my body, the somatic triggers, different just intestinal, like IBS, like just not well. But who the fuck am I going to tell that to?
That night immediately.
Oh, yeah.
So when you talk about like the somatic triggers and you talk about like IBS or intestinal discomfort, what else? Like what else showed up?
Just like not even being able to calm down, not
like anxiety.
Yeah, anxiety,
hypervigilance.
Yeah, the hypervigilance. You know, I now have learned that like you won't even feel normal till you get through a sleep cycle, which is probably not going to happen.
Sounds fucking impossible.
Yeah, exactly.
Man.
So
like, what is that? What is that even after something like that?
I know, man. So that's why, like, when you think about why the fuck are we back to work at 0600? We all should have been mandatoried off that whole week at least, and then we're mandatory to go see somebody, and we need to make sure. And man, I don't want, like, this is 2016. This isn't 1970. So by this time, we know in our profession, in the military community, that what goes on, that, yeah, it's going to take you a while to reset with that type of trauma, but no one does anything because we just said, high five, we're good. See you tomorrow.
And that's literally what happened.
Literally what happened. Yeah.
Do you even remember the next day?
No. I don't even remember most of that training program for the sergeant step process. The sergeant that was training me, that call hit him, which is understandable, pretty emotional. Specifically, yeah, we're not talking about this. And we never discussed it again.
Ever.
Nope. Yeah.
I mean, okay. First off, I don't know how you kept your shit. I mean, I guess, stepping back real quick, not to relive it or revisit it too much, but having to pack it down so that you literally don't lose it physically and emotionally on the evil that's standing in front of you or right there. I mean, also having to watch all the other people in the room completely come apart.
Yeah.
And you're wearing the stripes.
Right.
So that's not okay for you to do. It's already been decided.
Exactly.
And you're going to have to see this thing through from the get-go. And then again, you actually mentioned like the other first responders that actually have to come in and deal with this. Other professionals that see this shit on a daily basis.
Right.
Stripes or no, they're not holding their shit together. And here you are. I don't know. This might not be a very good question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Did that somehow validate for you that you were the right guy for the job and that this is how it was supposed to be? That this is what you signed up for, and I have to be the strong one here. I have to be the one to take this thing to the end because nobody else here is clearly capable of doing it?
That's a good question. Probably in the time, I think I was just so robotic at the point of like,
okay.
I mean, everything comes into play. If I would have said, no, I can't handle this, first day in the sergeant training program, you already thinking at that point, because I did very well in the test, so I was the top 3 to come out to start the training program for this new sergeant's list, which means good seniority, because I think that list, we had 40 sergeants on there. So that's good seniority, not right then, but 2 years down the road, if I'm still on the street, that's a lot of fucking juice when you're bidding for your shift. And my ultimate goal was to get back to the team as soon as possible. And we don't fuck around with this shit on the team. Like, sorry, that was a tough call. That's what we do.
I just asked that question because there's a whole other layer to how people take on, but more specifically, why they take on stuff beyond the things that we've already talked about, but like how the liability that exists beyond, again, just throwing up a red flag, but how does that, you're already thinking 3 years down the line.
Yeah.
If I do this, or if I show this weakness here, here's how it impacts. I might be having to work nights for the next 3 years or something like that, graveyards or whatever shift I don't want to work or whatever. That to me is like I don't think most humans think like that. You know,
they don't, but our culture breeds that.
That's what I'm saying.
That because like take a 5-year kid on that his only goals to get, like, we had street crimes and I want to get to street crimes, but I just had the worst fucking call that I could ever imagine. And I'm not okay. But if I come forward when I'm testing for street crimes, one of those guys are going to remember this and I'll never
make it.
And our team did it, man. Like when we had, every year we ran SWAT school in February. So we did testing for the team in December of the previous year. We would get, okay, these guys passed the tests. Here we're going to do peer review. So we literally lay out names and profiles. You have to get a picture taken, what squad you're on, who you work with, because a department that size, like I may not know these guys, especially the newer ones. And so we go do a peer review. And if someone would say like, yeah, that dude was on a shooting that fucked him up and he had 4 weeks off, we're like, yep, you're out. And that's what we did, man. And that's culture. And so, yes, those types of things, man, I've had people specifically say that, dude, if I come forward, I'm fucked.
Okay, this is going to be a blunt question. Maybe it's inappropriate, but I think you can answer it. So I'm going to ask it. The guy that says that shooting fucked me up, and then the guys that have to make the decision, can you blame them?
Interesting you say that, because yeah, one of my previous team leaders knows what I'm doing now. And he literally was my mentor. He had done 19 Special Forces, National Guard unit, long career in both military and law enforcement. He posed that question to me. He said, Travis, I'm a team leader and I see a guy had a problem with a shooting. Should I not be asking the question?
Or be concerned?
Yeah. Will they get into, if they get into another shooting, how are they going to handle it? I honestly think that's okay to ask that question, but let's talk to them about it. How are you doing now? And then what did you do? Yeah, that shooting, I don't know why that one messed me up, but this is what I did. I went to a culturally competent therapist and I received, for some reason, I had this cognitive break on this issue. I received EMDR therapy. I'm good to go. I've cleared it. I'm good to go.
You know what? Here's part of the reason I asked it. It's a good answer, by the way. And that's what we'd hope or we want, right? I guess when I look at it, if I'm trying to sit on the other side of this, I think there's some dishonesty in how that decision gets made, because there's no fucking chance in hell that anybody that's sitting on the decision-making side of that hasn't been through all of that same shit and has completely denied it and is basically being completely contradictory
100%
to the whole thing. So going back to the culture and how it's not, the word I was going to use is toxic. It's not toxic. That's not what I mean. It's just, I don't know. I'm struggling right now with that, but that just seems so wildly off base to where you're not facing yourself.
Right.
You have now become this character of sorts who's making decisions on other people's lives and holding, casting judgment.
Yeah.
When you're not even able to maybe, I guess, take that in for yourself and make a decision, a real decision based on real life stuff that you know you're dealing with.
Yeah.
But again, I guess it goes back to, if I wasn't aware, if I don't really know, if I haven't reached that break point yet where, or I haven't mustered up enough courage to say I do need some help, like I guess you haven't reached there yet. So I'm not judging them.
No,
I'm just saying I think or whoever's making that decision.
I made those decisions.
That guy. Yeah, I get it. That's just why, I guess that's why I asked you.
You know what though? I think you need to, it's good for people to understand how this is my personal opinion, where a lot of this culture comes from. My only view of PTSD until I learned it about myself was some Vietnam vet that was on the corner homeless, probably drunk, and causing me problems every fucking shift because he was just ornery, hateful, whatever, getting into petty crime. I don't care. And so when we would stand back in law enforcement, I know I had those thoughts like, I fucking PTSD. I didn't go to war. Like, that's not me. That doesn't happen to cops. And now we know, if you literally look at what, DSM-5, the clinical books tell you, that PTSD, PTS, we see these things every day because of cumulative trauma, the chaos, the repetitive cumulative trauma. And it makes sense now, but we aren't educated that way.
You didn't know. So, man, there's so much to come back to on this, but let's keep going here. Okay. So you go through this particular incident, and a lot of times this is referred to as like the career incident, the one that doesn't necessarily break the camel's back, but it's the catalyst for bringing all that, basically popping the lid on that 5-pound box with all the
Mhm.
10 pounds of shit that's in it, and it starts coming out.
Right.
And then other things happen, and that lid gets opened up more and more
Yeah.
and more and more. So what happens next, man? Like, and how does some of the things you've already mentioned start to manifest?
Mm-hmm. So, man, I do what my career path told me to do, right? I was trying to get back to the team. So I go out on the street and I finally, I get through the training program, get my own squad, and I'm going to do my thing. And one of my easiest coping things, just be at work more. And I was killing it at work. Like I brought, typically at Mesa, I don't know like what it is at other departments, the SWAT guys that promote to sergeant, they do fairly well as patrol sergeants. Because any of the chaotic stuff that you deal with on the street, we're like, yeah, we do that.
Big deal.
Yeah. And I think it's huge because those are the moments you see across the country where things get really south when someone's not prepared for that stressful moment. So it comes naturally to them. Well, me, I wanted to take it to the next level. And I had a great squad, like young guys. They all wanted to be on SWAT. In fact, most of them bid to me because they're like, Gribble's a SWAT dude. We know he's going back to team. We want to learn from him. So I was doing all this shit.
Same thing you did.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly, man. So like I took them to the level of patrol tactics as high as I could take them to what their capabilities were. And I just drove myself trying to get back to the team. But I immediately realized calls after that did not sit the same with me. I specifically remember in that first year, a couple murder-suicides and handled my shit. If you'd ask my lieutenant, he'd be like, yeah, Gribble's killing it. Fucking handled the scene perfect. And I got my car after my responsibilities were done, go to a dark corner, and I fucking got tears rolling. I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with me? Because that cup was getting to the point of like overflowing.
Start to spill.
Mm-hmm. And it was not good.
So, I mean, those are some of like the emotional things, that happen, like watching a movie with sad scene type of thing,
sure.
and you're like, well, dude, what's going on?
Yeah.
I'm crying. It's a movie or this, I've never felt this
Mm-hmm.
before. What else?
Night terrors. About 2 weeks after that call, the first time I ever had a night terror.
What is that like?
So, yeah, if you'd asked me back then, I'd be like, I'm a fucking grown man. How do I have nightmares? So dream about the call and wake up.
The incident with
the Ruby, is her name. And that wake up, I don't know where the fuck I am, even though I'm in my own bed in Mesa, Arizona. I feel like the walls are literally going to close in on me. Like you feel like it's moving. I'm not getting my bearings. I know I'm kind of awake, but I can't figure it out. Enough, I grab my phone because I feel like I'm fucking having a heart attack. I am drenched. I'm not talking like we worked out in your gym. I'm talking fucking soaked. The whole t-shirt looked like I had it on and jumped into the ocean. And I'm about ready to call 911. And I specifically remember looking at my phone and having this thought, how the fuck am I going to tell the guys I had a heart attack? I'm fucking SWAT.
Oh, you think you're having a heart attack?
Yeah, I think I'm having a heart attack. And I'm like, what? I literally, the images in my mind being on a fucking gurney in the back of an ambulance, I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And that didn't happen every night, but it became periodic to where I'd have something. Well, then that turns into insomnia because I can't go to sleep. I don't want to go to sleep because I'm scared of what's waiting for me. So then, well, I'm going to drink some more because at least if I drink enough and I lay my head on the pillow, I'll hopefully go to sleep, fall asleep. But that wasn't fucking good because you wake up 2-3 hours later, you're fucked up. You still have the stuff. And then you may be in bed for 8 hours, but your sleep is shit because it's alcohol. Your heart rate's elevated while you're trying to process that alcohol. It's just crap. Coping by working more. I was fucking pissed, man. Like it's like a joke in our profession about, man, that guy who's been on 20 years, he's fucking angry at everything. He hates life. He hates his family. He hates that victim. He hates that, whatever it is. Something's going on, man. Like, and I found out that's part of depression, especially in males. Like that depression manifests through anger to where we fucking hate road rage. You want to fight with me on the street?
Let's go.
Let's go. I've been waiting for this tonight. Let's go. And, that is not a good place to be because you literally feel like you're losing control of everything. And I had always prided myself, again, coming up through the SWAT community. Hey, man, pretty calm, cool, and relaxed. Not much should really rile you. and I was not having control, which was not a good place to be because especially as law enforcement, you're trying to be in control, man, all the time.
Does that end up biting you in the butt?
Fuck yeah.
I mean, let's talk about that. Like, obviously, there's some character traits there that I would, people might associate with, well, in some cases, those are good things given this guy's job description and the people that he's dealing with. You've already told us about some of those people, right?
Yeah.
Like, I want that guy, like on the front line when the time is right.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not on the front line all the time.
No.
There's a lot of other things going on, and obviously that's pretty risky. That's a huge risk or liability to have a person that's completely on the edge the entire time. What's going on with the job at that point? Like, are you getting into trouble? Because, and the reason I ask this is like other stuff generally starts to happen.
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
You say the wrong things to the wrong people. You pick the wrong fight. You won't let something go. You make a mistake in the street that costs you, puts you, in court or something like that. I mean, is any of that stuff, or is all of that stuff happening?
No, for sure. Again, my whole goal is to get back to the team. It didn't happen on day 366 because in Mesa, you have to do a year on the street. So I was like, 1 year I'll be back.
As a sergeant.
Yeah, back as a team leader. There wasn't an opening. Ultimately get back on in 18 months. But yeah, I definitely, you talk about, oh man, that can be good in some position. Definitely. Police officers need to be able to engage in violence when appropriate. There was times on the street where when I'm waiting, because sergeants in Mesa were no call status, we're just supervisory role. So we go to the scenes where we need to be, let's do stuff for our guys, take care of them, give them what they need. And I would wait for those calls, my hard chargers, like in a foot chase. And if you see the call comments, oh yeah, here we go, here's a fight. And I would race to get there because Sergeant Gribble is going to get some action. And that's unprofessional, man. But I didn't know it at the time, but I was just trying to vent. I knew I was angry.
Purge valve.
Yeah, purge. Yeah, totally. Like, I need to release that valve. I need some pressure out. And then, little things in the family, my boys definitely, we can joke about it now, but they're like, yeah, Dad, you're an asshole. And I'd come home and want to have, I wasn't beating them or anything like that, but definitely would lose my shit. Like, you better fucking regimented. This is why. And I thought it was just like, Dad's just making sure you're squared away, which is appropriate at times, right?
I have a dad.
When you're a fucking asshole 24/7, like anything you do, Dad's going to be fucking pissed, like walking on eggshells.
Regimented or not.
Yeah, totally. And so I saw that, which I would say that's the most regretful because now I look back, I'm like, fuck the career, man. Like I lost some time with my boys because I didn't handle shit appropriately. But yeah, then I ultimately get back onto the team. I had always been one throughout my career. And, people always ask like, hey, pick the right fight or are you willing to die on this hill? I was definitely always one. I could not leave a situation or go home the end of the shift. And like, if something needed to be said, I don't care what your rank is. I'm okay to have that conversation, but in respectful, right? We need to respect the rank and we do need to pick timing. When's the time to approach this? But once I get back to the team, and I thought that was the answer. I'm like, if I get back to the team, I'm good. I'm back with my brothers. No more of this on patrol shit, which seems to be fucking me up. I just need to be back with my team. But I came back kind of fucking hot. Just like other, SWAT, we kind of go back and forth with whether it's street crimes or narcs. Like they want to do one thing one way. And we're like, no, that's not how we fucking do it. We're taking this operation. I would have appropriate conversations as far as the subject matter, but my delivery and how I was doing was not good.
I've heard this before from people sitting in that chair.
Yeah. And just, I do not regret my personality as far as like being willing to challenge the system because I believe in that. I believe we need more of that. However, there's a way to do it and I was not doing it. And that's where I started seeing, I didn't see it then, but as I look back, the chinks in the armor, like Gribble's losing his cool. Why the fuck's he flying off the handle? And quite honestly, I probably should have had like one of my lieutenants, she would tell you, she'd probably sit here and get teary-eyed. If she had it to do over, she saw these things. She should have said, no, it's time to get some help. Because she knew. She knew about that call from 2016. She was part of the peer group at that time. So she probably has some regrets there. And that, as an agency, those would be things like, I often you'll get a call from a chief, sheriff, supervisor, whatever, and they'll say, hey man, we got this guy or gal and we know they're dealing with some shit, but they've also fucked up some policies here. They might have some hand slapping, a complaint, whatever. We always have to do that in our profession, right? If we aren't doing shit right, we're militaristic. There's a reason for that. But also as supervisors, as bosses, as leaders, hey, did they always used to be like this? What's going on here?
Mm-hmm.
Let's sit down like, hey, man, you fucked up over here, but we care about you as a human being, who you are as a family man. Like, let's talk about what
that's easy to talk about, but way less actionable than people, I think, realize. And I hear people, first responders talk about this all the time. I hear you talking about family this, family that, but I need time off, or there's these programs or whatever else. And it's all talk, for a lot of different reasons. So yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think most people probably understand that at this point too.
Yeah.
Like it's a lot of rhetoric.
Yeah.
Now I will tell you, I've also had several officers sitting in that chair, or others that have gone, I could not be more fortunate to have the supervisory staff that I have. And, the chief writes, handwritten birthday cards and stops into briefings and, pulls you aside, knows my kid's name, that kind of stuff, like those kind of things. But that's very, very uncommon.
Right.
In the bigger picture. I may have been there a time or two in my life too, where I probably let my head get in front of me a little bit and do fuck up some things that didn't need to be fucked up. I mean, so you do get back on the team.
Yeah.
And what happens?
Yeah, man, things don't slow down. Get back there. There's a lot of shit going on. BLM, COVID was going to start. We're busier than ever. Our team was running about 300 operations a year, and which is busy for a team like ours. We had 25 guys. And again, that wasn't all search warrants, barricades. We did stuff with a violent offender unit, dignitary protection, but there was always something going on, so nonstop. And we had some cumulative, nasty calls, some heavy ones where we had to make some tough decisions, and it just kept adding up, man. And the drinking didn't stop. I spent more time at work than I did at home, just because I now know that work was where, even though I had some of those chinks in the armor, it's where I felt most successful. At home, when I get home and sit down and try to relax, my mind's spinning with all this bullshit. And so, don't like this. I'm going back where I think I'm keeping it under control. Me keeping it under control is my mind's running a fucking 100 miles an hour. Like this operation, that plan for this is what's going on this week. Well, I just kept stuffing it down. That's what it was doing. And ultimately, culmination in 2021. I mean, a lot of things happened. I went to get some help through a psychologist at Mesa PD that.
So we're talking about the EAP program.
Yeah, EAP program, to where I went in. I was not truthful to the peer guy that I went to. I just said, hey, I've been through a divorce. My ex is giving me shit over custody. I just need to talk to somebody. Okay, yeah, Travis, here you go. Fucking horrible experience.
Okay, hold on. What drove that?
That get help?
Yeah, like why did you finally go, I need to talk to somebody?
Because I was fucked up. And I knew everything.
How did you know?
Because I knew personally the drinking was through the roof.
Okay.
I knew whatever these fucking nightmares were, that's going on, right? I know I'm pissed. Like, you got family members saying, like, dude, every time you walk through our door, you're about ready to fucking snap.
Okay, so this is an internal realization. This isn't somebody coming up to you like your kid or okay.
Yeah, so it's me knowing what I'm doing is not working. I need a solution, because that's what we do, right? We're cops. Right. We solve everyone else's problems. Now I need to solve mine, but I'm not going to tell people I'm going. So I went, and it was a horrible experience. Dude was obviously not invested, other than probably collecting a fucking paycheck through Mesa or EAP or whatever it was. And ultimately, 4 times in there, told him about, the situation in 2016. And he, I've seen his notes. It put on there, like, distressed about girl in bag is all he fucking put. Didn't recommend time off, recommend any therapy. Had told him I was drinking too much, told him my sleep was fucked up. Nothing. Well, come back to me when you feel stressed again. That last time I'm like middle finger in the parking lot to him, like, fuck, this is exactly what I thought these, quite honestly, kooks were.
It's all been validated.
Yeah, like, fuck this. I guess I keep going down the road I'm going. I'll fix it myself. This is the time where the suicidal ideations were really manifesting to where, again, it's a big subject, taboo subject in our profession and the military community as well. Firefighters, dispatch, all of it. That suicidal ideations are normal in our profession, meaning I'm in a lot of pain right now. I don't know how to fix it, and everything I'm doing is not working, but I know what I can do to fix it. I can take my own life, because in our profession, we have jumped over a lot of hurdles that the general public, when they get to that point, have to get through to make that step.
Like what?
So we carry a firearm every day. It's in my hand every fucking day. I carry off duty. I have dealt with stress that really most of the general public, unless you've done our job, you cannot fathom what it is. You cannot fathom, no matter how many fucking cop TV shows, whatever you read about, the news stories, until you've walked in it. You've walked into a room of suicide. There's brain matter dripping off the ceiling.
You're stepping in it.
Stepping
you're
it, smell it.
Smelling
the taste in your mouth from blood, heavy homicide scenes. So like, yeah, I know what that is. I know when people have fucked up. A female that I remember specifically trying to kill herself with a .22 rifle, 3 shots in the gut. Well, I know that doesn't work. And she finally calls while she's still conscious. God. Well, I fucked up. Well, yeah, I know what works. A shotgun under the chin. A 9mm in the temple. I know what works. I know how I do it. Why'd you do it that way? Or why would you do it here for your family to fucking have to clean this mess up? This is where I would do it. And you have the gun in your hand, like, I could do this right now. Like,
you've seen the formula.
Yeah. There's no mystery is how I put it. There's no more mystery to taking your own life. I know what that looks like. I know what it is.
I heard a percentage used, like in terms of increased risk.
54% increased risk for first responders than the general population. And last year, Greg and I talk about this all the time. There were more suicides than all other line of duty deaths in law enforcement. And that is underreported because we know we're not getting, for the organization that we follow, for that to happen, the family has to agree to it and the agency has to agree to put that name on there and identify it. And a lot of times those two don't coincide. And there's other people doing shit, drinking themselves to death, I just drove off a cliff.
And that's a car accident.
Yeah, and my family will get my pension now. Death benefits.
That's mind-blowing.
And so, yeah, man, the suicide thing, like, I hate this fucking bullshit where you hear, well, yeah, they were going through a divorce or they had financial problems. No shit. We all have that stuff. We are at more risk because it's easier for us to take that step, is what we're trying to preach. It has nothing to do. I don't care about all the circumstances. I'm trying to tell you that because of the higher risk, we need to address it, like throat punch the fuck out of that thing and make sure people know, like, we have a problem. More like, it blows my mind, dude, when you think more people took their own hands in law enforcement than were killed in all other line of duty deaths. That's mind fucking blowing.
It's mind blowing. Yeah. I did not know that. I knew it was high. I've seen some statistics lately, following you guys, they popped up, but that really hit me. But I didn't really, like, I've always, as from the outside looking in, just been like, yeah, of course, because there's so much stress they're under on a regular basis, and the cumulative trauma and what I understand about PTS and PTSD, the differences there. And I always just put it into, like, man, they're going through a lot. This is how this trickles over into their regular life,
right?
With regard to the divorces and the kids and the finance and the misdirected energy and the toxic behavior that they might be getting themselves involved in. And that's the reason it just becomes too much. But I never thought about what you just said right there. It's like, yeah, not only all of that, right? Which is a lot of the same things a lot of people have to go through. Yes, there's this cumulative trauma of the suicides, the vehicle accidents, the things, all the things, the horrible story that you told. But I already know how to do this. I'm an expert at this.
Yeah.
So the steps that you said got cut out, the wondering, the mystery, the even having to think about it. I don't have to think about this. Like I know exactly what to do.
Yeah.
And walking into it and having that reaffirmed, a couple of times a month, depending on what team you're on or whatever. Just going, oh, there's another one. Yeah. Like that's how I would do it. This one got it right this time.
Yeah.
This person got it right.
And take a guy like a SWAT guy, a military guy. Oh, and I know ballistics. I know what this takes to do. Like I'm not just some dummy going and picking some round here or there. Like you even go into that depth. Like, yeah, this is the round I do.
I'm going to get the job done.
Yeah. I'm not going to fail at that. I'm getting the job done.
Oh man. So suicidal ideations, and how much easier it is for you to get to those. Yeah. So they're popping in your head. So those things are picking up. You're in a rough time. You mentioned like rough time in law enforcement. It's not an easy time, like pretty underappreciated kind of all the time. But in that particular, up till now, it's been pretty rough. It's been pretty weird. Yeah. So what else?
Yeah, for sure. And then, so my wife, my second wife now, Emily, she had been a cop in Seattle for 9 years and then lateral to Mesa where we met. And then she was with Internet Crimes Against Children. And so they had, ironically, a pretty shitty experience with the same dude that I went through. And they were like, fuck that guy.
Wait, after?
Oh, yeah. Like
after you?
Yes. So ironically, yeah.
Wait, what the fuck happened? Dude, how does this guy get away with more? Or was just this an ongoing investigation?
I didn't tell anybody either. Yeah. I didn't tell anybody the bad experience. I just walked out of there. So, yeah, my wife, her whole squad was required to go once per quarter because the Internet Crimes Against Children, what they're viewing on the image. And the last detective that had been in there, one of my wife's partners, in the middle of fucking the therapy session, he takes a call to do a real estate deal. Says, hey, hold on just a second. Stays in the office, takes this call. And she walks out like, fuck this guy.
Time out. She's got issues. She's finally worked up enough courage to get into get in to see the person.
Well, she's required. Yeah, because it's that Internet Crimes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. So she has to go through these regular things. And this is like basically like an EAP type therapist.
Correct.
This is who's been assigned to the project and to the people.
Yep.
Sitting in a therapy session, the phone rings.
Yep. And it's a real
Number
estate
one, the therapist answers it.
Yeah.
And it's some real estate deal he's working on with his real estate agent.
Right. Exactly.
Are you fucking kidding me?
And I wish I could tell you like, man, I've never heard any craziness like that. It's unfortunate because this EAP or when a department says, hey, this is an embedded therapist, this is Travis's personal opinion and an opinion shared by many people across the country in our position that says they are in it to get a little bit of money. They're not invested. Right. They're probably not the best therapist available because if people don't understand this, to like go be a part of an EAP program, if a city, a county is adding these people on, you are not paying top dollar. It's lowest bidder, I'll be quite honest with you.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Never could have imagined that. Yeah, really?
And insurance companies.
Yeah. And Greg and I, man, you said something yesterday. I was telling Em this, my wife. Would you as a fucking parent be like, yeah, take the lowest bidder for childcare? You said something like that to me and I'm like, that's a fucking perfect example. So why should I... And I'll tell if there's like people out there that listen through, maybe you've dealt with workman's comp. How well does that go for you? It's the same deal.
I just went through car insurance. I was telling you about my
vehicle. Right.
They've been dragging their feet for fucking months.
Yes.
Right. And now it's turned into a negotiation to try to get what's probably fair at the end of the day. Same exact deal.
So you can understand. So my wife, their squad says, fuck it. We're standing together as a team. They told their command staff, you literally start writing complaints. We aren't going again. And they said, how about we let you find who you want to go to? So they're like, okay, we can live with that. And they ended up finding, it's an organization called Public Safety Crisis Solutions in Phoenix. And Jennifer Cooper, my therapist,
got it.
She's one of their contractors. So they started going to her. So Em's like, Travis, this one's different. Like 2 dudes that were her partners, old salty motherfuckers, like been on forever. They were like, she's like, they're having success with her. I'm like, those 2, like, and I'm still, of course, I already had my negative experience. I already had my overall picture of what a therapist was. So I was listening and Em wasn't saying, I'm fucking divorcing you. You're out if you don't go. But she's telling me, I'm seeing these things.
She's running a hard line.
Here's where you go.
Got you.
I kept putting it off, man. Like I found every excuse in the book. So in January of 2021, I finally, okay, fuck it. I'm going to make an appointment with this lady. And I didn't tell her when I made this appointment, I was in crisis, just said, hey, my wife comes to you. I'm going to come see a therapist. I was just real chill. And she's like, okay, I'll get you the next appointment I have available under these circumstances, which was going to be a few weeks away. And I say under these circumstances because one of the things Greg and I love about culturally competent therapists is when they sense crisis in that first responder, when they make that call or send that email, red flags go up like, you need to see him now. Like that dude I was telling you back from Montana, red flags, therapist now. I don't care if it's, hey, Saturday afternoon, we might need to at least get a phone call with them and let's see where we're at. But nothing for that for Jen. So I was supposed to get in March 8th. It was a Monday, 2021. And I'm no shit, man. I'm literally pulling into her parking lot in Phoenix. I'm on-call team leader that day. And a page comes out on the phone that there's a barricade back in Mesa. I'm like, fucking sweet. I don't have to go. And I canceled the appointment and headed back to Mesa, handle a barricade, pretty simple, gas the guy out, take him into custody without incident really. Do our debrief on scene amongst the team, send everybody home. And like 45 minutes later, I'm home and there's a hostage rescue. My lieutenant calls me. I get the page simultaneously. He's calling me. One of my lieutenants said, hey, Travis, you're on call team leader. We got a hostage rescue. Okay, what do you got? And very nice area of Mesa. If people haven't been to Mesa, like there's some fucking killer neighborhoods and then there's shit. This was one of the nice neighborhoods, just low crime other than, petty car break-ins, whatever, that kind of shit.
Every neighborhood's got a little bit of that.
And what happened was this young girl, she had escaped from her home. She had already been badly beaten and shot by her dad. And she tells the neighbors, still inside the home is my dad, my mom, and 18-year-old sister. So when I get that info, there's a couple different ways with SWAT. Like I know there's different terminology, but deliberate plan, meaning if people can imagine, I don't know, fucking imagine a movie where, there's hostages in a home and they're saying in 5 hours, we're killing everybody unless their demands met. So we have time to plan. We'll put up explosive breaches, plan entry teams, window teams, all this shit. Well, because of this information, this dude had already committed violence. We had other potential victims in there. I kind of knew like, this is probably going to go what we called hasty or emergency assault, they may say. And so as I'm getting there, I get my, get dressed at the house and I'm flying to the scene. Big call, obviously. I'm thinking in my mind, but I'm getting more information like, we're going to end up, I'm going to grab who I got there. We're going in. I want to get in there and save everybody. And so we get there. I come up with a plan, come up with a team. We're going to go into the back of the house. People aren't familiar with Arizona. Everyone has a large fucking 6-foot tall brick wall. Mm-hmm. We can sneak back there and get to a patio door. We felt undetected. And so that was going to be my entry point. Planned a guy for a shotgun breach. He was going to have him drop that glass. And then we make entry at that point. So did that. That worked perfectly. We go in. I think I was 4th in the stack running as a team leader and go in immediately inside, see a male, obvious deceased, gunshot wound to the head. That turned out to be the suspect. On the other side of a couch was an older female, obvious deceased, gunshot wound to the head, turned out to be the mom. And the scene was pretty shitty. I didn't realize what was happening, even though with the information I had, if I would have had time to think right then, I'd probably put it together. But there was blood everywhere downstairs away from these bodies. So I'm like, what the fuck is this? Later find out, like, this little girl was a fucking hero. Ultimately, dad takes multiple shots at her. She's running, hits her. He ends up beating her, hitting in her head with a frying pan. She's bleeding all over the place. Ultimately, she plays dead.
He thinks she's dead.
Yeah. I mean, she, in the interview, said, I played dead. I'm like, fuck, that's heroic. Would I even have thought to do that? I don't know.
God,
and
dude.
she's bleeding everywhere and it's getting smeared all over the big Arizona tile. So that's what that was. And then even upstairs, we saw little footprints in the blood, little handprints up the wall. So I'm like, fuck. So we work our way up, clear the upstairs, and I end up in a room with a couple other operators. And unfortunately, the 18-year-old's obvious deceased in her bed with gunshot wound to the head. I didn't know at the time what the fuck was happening to me, but this scene was hitting me pretty hard and it was hitting multiple team members pretty hard. And through therapy and through these guys, a couple of them going to Jennifer Cooper also, and we've all been able to talk and kind of debrief this amongst ourselves. I had full intention. I thought when I was going in there, I'm going to rescue. We're going to kill this fucking suspect and we're going to rescue everyone. Going in with that mentality, and it turns out to be a recovery. I have now found out that like that's a pretty fucking hard hit when you have your mindset. And I don't want to say you all should be prepared for everything, but I don't know what we had information. I couldn't even tell you why we were all so focused. Like, yeah, we're going to save these. Because no one outside, they didn't hear any other gunshots. Like, yeah, they're still alive. We're doing work tonight and we're going to save these other two. And it didn't work out that way. And I was not well. I specifically remember we left the scene because there was a lot of controversy. Our team was pissed off. We're going back and forth with patrol a little bit. Like, you motherfuckers should have made entry. You know, you didn't have to wait for us and that kind of bullshit, which is really unwarranted on our part because you can never answer those questions, right? But in the heat of the moment, everyone's trying to figure out what the fuck happened. And so we like, hey, let's get the whole team to the school parking lot in this neighborhood. We need to see how everybody is. I specifically remember getting in my truck, screaming at the top of my lungs to the point the next day, like I felt like I couldn't talk, slamming my hands on the steering wheel, bruises, because I was just fucking the cup was fucking spilling hard. Like the dam had just broke. And the team wasn't good, so we made a decision. We called Phoenix SAU, their SWAT team, said, hey, can you cover the team for 24 hours? We need to let these guys turn their fucking phones off. They have been running and going hard. They are whipped. This was not a good call. They are not okay. And so, of course, Phoenix like, hell yeah, man, we got you guys. So we sent everybody home. We're supposed to come back for training the next morning, which we did. Unfortunately, it's just the way it is. You know, our team, which most teams should be doing this, I'm sure they do, but we always had our training calendar planned 12 months in advance. Mm-hmm. So this day we were supposed to do hostage rescue in our live firehouse. We're like, no way are we fucking doing this movement. Send everybody. We're going to we had a spec ops building, special operations, gangs, us, and we had our own floor. So we could literally go up there and just be the team. No one's going to fuck with us. Like, let's just see how everybody is, you know? And I even saw some dudes like they were fighting tears. They were not, I'd never seen them. And again, this wasn't our first rodeo. We were doing 300 operations a year. So at the time you'd have asked me like, what's going on? I've been like, I don't fucking know. Unfortunately, on the same day, because of Travis's actions and some of it because personality conflict, there was an assistant chief that didn't want me working as a team leader more. He didn't like how I handled business.
In general. Not because of this incident.
In general. And I had a couple lieutenants. They were fucking awesome, which they should be. Went to bat for me like, hey, because they knew they wanted to remove me from the team 6 months from now. And they said, hey, and I didn't tell too many people this other than one lieutenant knew. My dad had just died 2 weeks prior. Had a shitty relationship with my dad, but we literally had reconciled on his deathbed. Nurses putting the phone up to his ear. My dad couldn't talk, but he could acknowledge. So I'm telling him, we're making amends. And he died a few hours later. Still pretty difficult for me. So that was on my plate. My one lieutenant knew about the Ruby call that I had said just in passing. And she is a dear friend of mine because she was part of Peer at the time. And I said, yeah, that Ruby thing kind of gets to me every now and then, just kind of nonchalant. Mm-hmm. So she knew that. And then what we dealt with the night before, they're like, we don't need to tell Travis today.
Oh, they want to do it now.
Yeah. So there was a meeting. I saw a closed door meeting going on. And when our lieutenant's office door was closed, we know like shit ain't good. Yeah, that's how she never kept her door closed. When the door's closed, and sure enough, I see the commander of Spec Ops come out. He goes down to his office. She comes marching over. She has tears in her eyes. And she's like, yeah, go commander's office with me. And something went off in my head. I'm like, these motherfuckers are going to remove me today. And so sure enough, I marched down and some assistant chief had made it his point. Like, yeah, I decided today, tell him today he's done. And 6 months from now. So I'm like, so I'm staying on the team for 6 months. You had to fucking tell me today. I was not in a good mindset right then. The team wasn't, because I come back upstairs. They saw me get marched down. They're like, what the fuck happened? Well, let's sit down, guys. And my lieutenant told them they were not well. So we sent everybody home, like, because they wanted to burn the fucking
I can't imagine. Yeah.
And so
can't imagine.
At some point, whether the drive home, before I left, when I got home, I can't remember exact time, I texted Jennifer Cooper and said, shit's hit the fan. I'm not well. I am not okay. And I was ready. I was like, yeah, I'm exiting. I'm done with life. And thank God Emily was there. She took care of me. And Jen, now being that culturally competent therapist and speaking our language, she's like, okay, crisis. Yep, moving some shit around. I'm on the phone with her like, okay, what's your safety plan tonight? Em, are you going to be with him? And Em was seeing Jennifer, so they had a relationship.
Yep.
Like, yep, I'm with him. He's safe. Like, I'm not leaving his side until the next day. I went to see Jennifer Cooper for my first ever appropriate session with a therapist that knew what the fuck they were doing. And it was tough, man. I had never told Emily about the suicidal ideations. That was tough. First time I ever told was Jennifer Cooper, and to hear her say like, yeah, that's normal in your profession and we need to talk about it. Why are you feeling that way? And blown away that someone wasn't fucking marching to my house to pull my guns, put a 72-hour hold, commit me into a mental hospital, because that's the picture I had in my mind from how we preach it. What's going to happen? Oh, if you ever say you're suicidal, your fucking career is done. It's not how it works, man. It doesn't have to be that way, but we've made it that way. And I let everything out that first 2-hour session. I was 2 hours with her, just bawling. I couldn't get 6 seconds out of talking, and I'm just sobbing. And it was a relief, man. Like almost even after that first day, and I didn't go through any therapy, I was just talking. I remember coming out of there like, fuck, I finally told somebody. But then it was a long road, man. Like 2 days a week, heavy therapy. I went on PTSD medication. Jennifer had a big sell on that, sent me to a psychiatrist the next day. Again, told him about suicidal ideations. Like, yep, normal. He sees vets. He sees first responders. Yep, I've heard this before. Let's talk about it. Let's make sure you're safe. Again, no one's marching to take my guns. Right. None of this bullshit. And I went on the medication. Best thing I ever did, man. PTSD medication specifically was to start getting me sleep, because Jennifer knew she was about to take me into some hell to work through this shit I hadn't processed.
A little bit of a life jacket there.
Yeah, man. So I needed to come home and recover, and we do that while we sleep,
right?
Which we're terrible about it anyways, especially in our profession. But she needed that for me, and it's the best thing I ever fucking did.
The rest is history.
The rest is history.
That brings us all the way back to the beginning of this conversation.
Yeah.
How we got here today. Man, thanks for sharing all that. Yeah. I heard some of the story, the versions of this, and I was listening to the presentation yesterday, and I think people try to finish the story, a lot of times, like, well, what happened? But in this case, like, I would never try to finish this, and I'm sure people are hanging on edge. Man, what happened to Ruby?
Dude, she's fucking awesome. I unfortunately didn't know a whole lot about her until recently. There was actually some failures on our agency's part. I found out later that year, a bunch of officers were invited to a birthday party for her at our department just to see her in a new light.
Oh, wow.
They never told me. And working through with my therapist now, I think that would have been life-changing for me, because the only image that I had in my head was her pulling her out of that bag that day. And I had all sorts of, I kind of skimmed over all that stuff, but I had triggers from gray duct tape that were on her hands, black trash bags, the smell.
Like panic attacks if you
like if I pull out duct tape in my garage and I'm fucking on the floor, I'm literally feel like I'm taking the call right now again. And I did not understand what that was. I thought I was crazy. Like, why do I feel like I'm literally standing at that closet?
But you know why. You know why, but you don't know why.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, you're fucked up from gray duct tape.
But why is my body doing this?
And I felt like I was failing. Right. Like, I should have control of that. What the fuck's wrong with me? So that would have helped. But yeah, I was able to get some information, and I know now she's a beautiful little girl. And obviously, man, I'm not going to like paint a better picture. She's got some shit to deal with.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm hopeful that someday, because she's been adopted now by a loving family, because unfortunately, her mom was involved in this. She would drop this little girl off to this dude's house that wasn't related for a whole drug habit type bullshit.
Fuck.
So she's in prison. Obviously, the piece of shit's in prison. Grandma's in prison. Like, it's just terrible. So I'm hopeful that the adoptive family here's what the tragedy has brought, because I believe, she's everything why we do what we do. And using that story to make a connection and hopefully save some lives. So I'm hopeful that she gets, and I do hope, I hope I'm maybe in the same room with her again someday. Like, I don't need her to know. I don't even know if people like, do you want to talk to her? I'm like, I don't know.
Right.
I just, not she's going to remember me. I guarantee you she doesn't, but I don't know. Just be in the presence. Like, I've had these images, Em and I talk, like her being at a playground. Maybe I'm watching from a picnic table. Like, yep, there she is. Good to go. Because, we talk about, or we haven't talked about yet, but where I am now is called post-traumatic growth. I have grown because of my trauma, right? I'm using those experiences because on that day after that happened, I fucking was pissed I were promoted. I hated fucking that day on Monday of 2016. I was pissed that I got asked to go up to that door. Now, through my therapy, through retraining my thoughts, I'm glad it was me. I'm glad I was there that day. Maybe someone else wouldn't have chose to do it that way. Maybe someone else wouldn't have even fucking looked in that closet or not looked in the closet, but noticed the bag. Yeah. I don't know. Would they have walked away? I've seen shit happen like, yeah, there's nothing here. We're out. Yep. Do a DC-1. That was our report. And yeah, just put it on file. I don't know. So I'm thankful it was me that day, but that's part of the post-traumatic growth. We need to celebrate people that have come forward, dealt with their shit, and now they're on the other side helping other people.
I think that's where this gets to is like, how does that happen? Like, so, I mean, you just walk through so many different things, and it's almost luck to some extent that you wound up in Jennifer's office sort of at the end when you think about, Emily, how she fits into the picture. How do those moon, sun, and stars, whatever you believe in, how does all that line up? How does the being served up that you're off this team in 6 months, how does that fit into the equation on top of all the other things? I think that the thing that probably makes sense to get to next is some of the things that you've talked about, but to bring and to highlight a couple of things along the way, and we go all the way back to the awareness piece. And that is that, like, this stuff is normal. Like you said, what's the term? I don't know if normal is the right way, but
yeah, I don't want, when we say normal,
just normalize the conversation, and that these things are not uncommon. They're not different to, to anybody, to any other officer or any other first responder. Everybody's going through this stuff at some level. Greg, you've talked about this. You and I have talked about this at length before, just in terms of like comparison of traumas. But that this is normal, right? This is a thing. Like, and how do we recognize that? How do we make people aware of that up front? So I just want to go all the way back to the beginning. I think maybe I wanted to jump ahead, but I think we kind of have to kind of break this down. I actually have some notes here because I didn't want to leave anything out here. One of the things that got said yesterday from Jennifer is, just to kind of, in telling the other people in that room, if this affects you, then you're one of the good ones. Because if it's not affecting you, what does that say about you? All of the stuff that if Travis gets through his entire fucking career and he's at the end of the day, none of this bothered him at all, what does that say about a person? I could tell you, I'd be very concerned about the human sitting across the table from me if none of that bothered him. Like, I think she referred to it as being a sociopath. But that's some level, like there's some serious psychological issues there. Sorry, I'm trying to get my shit together. I don't know. Where do we start with this? Just in terms of like, where are the immediate breakdowns? Like from all the way back to the beginning, and kind of with what you're doing with TOC. And bridging the gap between, like, this is what is happening. We already know it's a 54% increased risk of suicide. You're going to have these things. This is what's going to happen when you do get these things. We already know all this stuff. Where are the immediate breakdowns and how can they be changed?
Yeah, and I think it's people like Travis that have gone through these experiences, first responders and our service members, that are actually willing to talk about it and be like, hey, do not be like me. And Travis has said that before, where it's caring about that community and being like, hey, all of these years, I built up all this stress. I shoved all this shit down to the point where the suicidal ideations were coming. And clearly we see excuse me, we see so much of that in our community. How many other people are struggling in silence, but because of the stigma, because of the culture, they don't want the label of PTSD on their head. They don't want to lose that promotion, or they're on probation and they don't know what their FTO is going to think, I think there's a lot that goes into it. And I think it starts with conversations like this and podcasts and events where it's like, from the community, from an retired police officer, this is what I went through. I know you're going to experience this in your career, whether it's a year or 10 years, but you need to be doing X, Y, and Z for yourself.
How do we get that conversation to stop happening from just the retired guys?
Yeah.
And
get it internally
and
right
get
now.
it internally. I mean, I think what I've learned is there's some obvious huge issues along the way, but with that, I mean, you mentioned the hardest one is the culture,
Right.
That's the hardest thing to change. I think in any case, like you can reorganize leadership, you can reorganize, a lot of things, and you can change people out, but culture is a very, very tough thing to change. Well, how do you do that, man? Like, how do you get people to think differently about this and communicate and behave differently with regard to this, so that less people are picking up a gun and sticking it in their mouth, man, because this shit's got to stop.
Well, I mean, you just touched on it. The culture is definitely the biggest hurdle for us. The way to start that, it's got to start with leadership. I believe it's got to start coming from top down. And they have to completely rewrite the script on how we've handled all this. Number one, it's got to come down like zero tolerance. There's no more bullshit. There's no more demonization. There's no more, they're not getting picked for this specialty unit because they came forward. And it has to start in almost an aggressive manner. Like, I don't care how the fuck we used to do it. I'm the chief. I'm the sheriff. This is how we do it now. Because I am not going to wake up tomorrow morning and one of our officers took their own lives, and I have to question myself, because you better be fucking asking this question. Have I done everything for my organization to prevent this? Have I done that? And if you can't say yes to that, then you better fucking keep going. Because I'm telling you, like, Craig knows I'm pretty fucking blunt. Like, man, some of these mistakes being made with this culture and not really taking this by the throat and saying we're doing something different, you got blood on your hands.
I was just about to say that. Like, I kind of feel that way too.
You do, man. And I don't take that lightly, man. I've never been a chief. I've never been a sheriff. I understand comes with a lot of responsibility. And you have people wanting shit from every fucking angle. And they've got their thing they're going to preach, this person, that person. But man, now you're talking about people losing their lives. If we had some person here in San Jose going, yep, they're down murdering cops every other day, every agency would completely change how they're doing business immediately, and we're stopping that threat. From the outside, you're only willing to do that. What about internally? I mean, let's change. Like, we have to rewrite it. And, I know we're going to go down this road, but that's a big hurdle, man. But that's why I love talk and why Greg and I got connected, because no matter at the end of the day, I would love for you to have an organization where they support you and all this. But I know, man, there's still so many places where it's going to be a tough road. Here's the Overwatch Collective that you can find someone, a vetted, culturally competent therapist that you can go to, completely confidential. And no one will ever know unless you want to tell them. Here you go, man, because we believe in you.
Yeah, I think so. One of the things is, because I want to define those terms here in a second, but you mentioned like the EAP and the issue there, and it goes to the lowest bidder.
Right.
Every single time. And the get what you pay for, paradigm or whatever it is stands out here. And I've heard it a lot of times from a lot of people. So anything you have to say about, your first experience doesn't surprise me really at all. The whole thing, picking up a phone call in a therapy session that happened to you, holy shit, that's wild. I haven't heard that shit before.
Right.
However, like the hanging the wellness program on the EAP, that just seems like such a disconnect. It's like you're box ticking here. And so the reality of the EAP is what? What are some of those things? Like we already mentioned, like, well, let's talk about the culturally, competent and experienced, therapist. Can you explain this and kind of the difference between an EAP potential therapist and what you get through talk?
Yeah. And I think through just like what Travis mentioned with the EAP is it's already tough for our community to go to the EAP and raise your hand.
Sorry, for anybody that doesn't know what that acronym is, this Employee Assistance Program. I don't think we've actually said that, so people may not be familiar yet.
Yeah, so if you actually do have you're at that point where you're finally like, hey, I've listened to podcasts. I've finally built up the courage to say, yes, I need help. And you go through the employment assistant program. Number one, you're risking people amongst your department or your sheriff's department finding out that you're seeking help, which is something that we do not do. And when you get connected to a therapist, it's a lot of the times it is like Travis's first therapy session where he or she is not trained in working with our community, which is no fault to them. They're a therapist. They're doing great things, but our community, we see, Travis shared his stories, the murder, suicide, Ruby. That is not what normal people go through. We should not be seeking therapy through your normal Kaiser EAP therapist.
Yeah, that's an interesting concept. So it's like we are not the same, but we're not the same, and here's why. We're not the same, and we deserve more, and whatever else. We're not the same, and here's why. Let's categorize some things here a little bit differently. I got you.
Yeah, and that's where the culturally competent comes into play. And thank God Travis was able to get connected to Jennifer, because who knows what would have happened. Maybe that's one of the reasons why we're losing so many in our community to suicide, is because he or she's not able to, number one, reach out because of the stigma. But number two, they're like, hey, I've heard all these great things about therapy. I took that step and it was horrible. I'm out. I'm done.
Yeah. So that's a consequence, of poor therapists or of having like a poor product or poor service available. What are some of the other consequences? Obviously the bad experience, I'm not going back, but what are some of the, I would think the ultimate consequence is the other end of that spectrum.
Yeah, you're taking your own life. And it is unfortunate, but a lot of times, like Greg mentioned it, if it would not have been for Emily and I didn't have Jennifer Cooper, I know I would not be here today. I would not have lasted. I would have taken my own life. Because that one horrible experience, I'm like, fuck it. No way am I going back. Like, what, am I going to go sit back here again and do something like that? And that's the highest risk right there, And these EAP, just so people understand, they may be saying like, what? I don't understand. Why is it so different? Well, there's a couple things. Number one, in the academic world, when you're going to school to become a clinician, a therapist, there is a heavy line of teaching that says you treat at arm's distance. You don't give anything about yourself. You do not invest in this person personally. They're literally just someone over there, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to connect. Versus a culturally competent therapist, and I have seen this 100% of the time, when they get involved with first responders, they treat through relationship. Because Greg and I, we don't trust anybody.
I was just going to say.
Yeah. And if you want
and you've had lots of training and interrogation and how to wiggle your way through a conversation, giving up certain things, not others.
Exactly. And so for me to sit across from someone and bear my intimate, I had nightmares, I'm crying, all this, I have to trust that you understand what I'm saying. Or Greg always brings it up. I've heard these horror stories too. A first responder goes into a therapist that has no business
being there,
hearing what we're going to say. Right. And the therapist is the one crying now because you just told them what. Yeah.
They're fucked up.
Yeah. And you're like, oh, this is fucking great. That you can't take that.
Yeah. I just validated how fucked up you really are too.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Like I just made you cry. Like that was just the first call that I'm struggling with.
Right.
So that's the difference. Everyone says, well, what if, like, for instance, if you hear Jennifer Cooper's opening, she's got, her dad was Vietnam vet. Her dad was U.S. Marshal. She works for Phoenix Fire. She was a probation sergeant. So she has that background, right? However, if you're a person, because Greg and I are going to try to keep recruiting these people for talk, it doesn't mean that you have to have that first responder background. Go learn about what it is we do. Go do ride-alongs. You want to get in with a department? Go to one of their trainings. Go understand, well, what kind of calls do you take in this city? If you want to be around the fire department, do you guys run a lot of medical? Do you have a lot of fires? What does you do? And how do you guys, get FaceTime and build that rapport? Now, when I sit across from you, if I haven't stepped in it, smelled it myself, I can probably render the description in my head. And I know, like Jennifer, she loves working with spec ops. I'm talking like violent offender, gang, SWAT. She just like 2 weeks ago, violent offender, U.S. Marshal Task Force, they run a school every year for outside marshals and outside detectives and for Mesa, that's their goal to get on the task force. And she was there for 3 days of training with them. She wanted to see, what is a vehicle containment? What are you guys doing new for these things? What are you guys talking about in your briefings? How do you discuss your shootings? And she's getting FaceTime. That is building trust because I just now see you're investing in me.
Mm-hmm.
You want to help us. You want to be like Greg and I. Greg's still in it like I was. I was passionate about my career. If someone's going to help me get well, I want them to be passionate about making me well, just like I have the passion for the job.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You went back while Emily was pushing you, she used the other two grizzled dudes.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah, those salty grizzled dudes is like, hey, even these guys are being helped. You're like, fuck, if those guys are going, or maybe that's the step.
Exactly.
To take it, or that it takes, or that helps you make the next step. Greg, how do we fix this? Like, what's the solution that Talks come up with for this?
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. You just said it right there, where you use the two gentlemen where you're like, hey, it worked for them. So then that gives off the, hey, if it worked for them, it can work for me as well.
Yeah. So how are you guys doing this? Like, how are you putting together, explain the setup with Talk and with regard to how you get folks in front of a culturally competent, therapist.
Yeah. So with Talk, our only therapists are culturally competent. And I can say that with 100% guarantee. We have a therapist outreach team and we have a therapist vetting program and we have a checklist where we get your EMDR certification. Oh, you've worked with first responders. How many sessions have you done? How many ride-alongs have you done? Have you done any SISM debriefings? Basically, as much info as we can. We're like, send everything you have to us. And we have a folder for each one of our therapists. And that is key because if we as a nonprofit say, all of our therapists are vetted, they're culturally competent, and then we have a first responder in Texas go to a therapist and he or she's not culturally competent, and they're like, yo, dude, like you got to fact check this. We may have just lost that first responder to therapy. Not only him or her, but it's like high school.
Anybody they talk to.
Everybody talks.
Just like you did.
Exactly.
You have those conversations where it's like, hey, I actually did go to therapy and it was fucking terrible. You think your beat partner is ever going to go to therapy again?
Yeah.
So again, vetting process. There's a recruitment and vetting process. How many of these folks do you have?
Yeah. So as of now, we have over 100 contracted therapists. I don't have the exact number, but yeah, we're almost in all 50 states as of now. And the goal with Talk is to have at least 5 to 10 in every single state with a podcast attached to each of them.
Wow, that's awesome. You mentioned something there just a second ago about like what's going on in your city. And this is not something I actually thought about, like having that person that you're talking to understand the culture. And culturally competent means like what's going on in your department,
right?
Or your agency, but particularly like what's it like in this city, right? Like you walked in today, like you're like, hey man, this is interesting area. Yeah, San Jose is not Mesa, Arizona,
right?
And Mesa is not other parts of the Bay Area,
for sure,
right? Or whatever else. So there are different things. You're dealing with different things, and understanding what those things are, and actually being able to like literally connect with them. Like I've been there, I've seen this. I was on that side of town. I've been in that facility, or whatever else. I can see where that could be extraordinarily important in terms of building trust versus Zoom meeting somebody that's on the other end of the country, who may be very good and trying to connect with you, but isn't quite there yet, and how important that is.
And one thing I want to say, how important the vetting process is I'll give you an example. So I get to travel across the country with Jen and 2 in Montana. Literally when we go to other states, we have had multiple cities try to convince her to move there. What does it take? Because they hear my story. they hear that Travis is now vetting this person. We need someone like that. They're literally like, I mean, almost
like
drooling at the mouth.
Yeah.
And then in Montana, when we leave an event, they know, Brandon and Gypsy both know the next day I'm probably going to have, or within a week, 4 or 5 new people. And that happens every fucking time. I'm not lying. Like they joke like, well, I wonder how many it's going to be this week. And which is amazing. And they both have converted now. They handle nothing but first responders and veterans because they see a need. So I'm hoping like if somebody's listening to this and maybe you're in this field or you're thinking about it, if you somehow find that passion, if you have this respect for first responders that you somehow like, how can I give back? I'm telling you, if you're willing to put in the work, like we need you. Because my goal is when I travel the country, if I can, every city I go to, like Greg and I, maybe we're going to do some more stuff together across the country. But if we can also at our events have a talk therapist show up and like, here you go, and give them the opportunity to tell a little bit about themselves to that group of people, life-changing.
Right.
Because they will take you up on it. When we vet them and say, no, listen to us, they're good to go, they're going to go, okay. So we need that.
I think that one of the most powerful things in this is just the messaging, right? And sharing the messaging. So you go back to like there's 5 or 6 people like every time.
Yep.
Right. These people need to hear this message and they clearly want to hear it. They're just waiting for it to be delivered in the right kind of way. So I wonder about the message delivery. And like obviously, Greg, you guys got the podcast and you want to do more with that with these different, now all 50 states would be amazing. I didn't know that. Actually, that's news to me. I think it's amazing. You're traveling, constantly getting in front of people, being on podcasts like this one and whatever else. And I mentioned at the top of this thing that I never get more emails. And to be specific about the emails and the messages I get, some of these are pretty heavy.
Yeah.
I've had to close that thing and take a lap, a few times.
Yeah.
My point of that is I don't know that people understand the power of just talking about it and sending the message out. So like, what do you want people to know about like that? How do you do that in the culture without being the guy that's thumping everybody over the head with the Bible or whatever else to where at some point you're going to get cut off? What's the best way to kind of infiltrate? This is like an insurgency you guys need to do here without being like saying at the same time, don't fucking go to your EAP program, right? It's going to be the worst decision you ever make, right? Without saying that, how do you infiltrate and get inside?
Yeah, so I think we need more people in our community that have gone through this fucked up shit and have been at the bottom of the bottle. Their cup has been full and they got the help. They got good help and now they're doing good. We need you to speak. We need you to come on podcasts. We need you to do presentations because imagine in every single state, we had a first responder service member be like, hey, I'm totally okay with sharing my story and ensuring that people are not like Greg. Do not be like me. Going out to all these trainings, giving presentations, doing podcasts, stories like this and Travis are what need to be told. Because yesterday at the Be Here Tomorrow event, when Travis was telling his story, you see all these heads go, And one of the gentlemen that was there sends me a text while Travis is speaking, and I showed it to him after. He goes, Travis just described me to a T, ... And I'm sure he was not the only one in that room.
Right. He's just the one that messaged you.
Yeah. But if Travis never shared his story, is not doing what he's doing now, we're missing out on so many people that need to hear that message.
He said something about it being a leadership top-down type of thing. And, like if you're going to put one of these programs into your department or to your agency or whatever, you better be the first one on that fucking appointment book. Like you, if you expect this to work, you need to have gone through it and respect it and be that leader there. But I'm going to just kind of jump in here objectively and tell you, I've actually had a conversation here in this room, and that conversation got back on this topic, and it got back to that department, and he was called in by the chief and basically shamed and ridiculed and really pissed him off, as you can imagine. Just validated all the concerns he already had about the whole program within the program, kind of thing. And I think that's a very real fear and a very real, it's just real.
Yeah.
I mean, like, there is risk at telling your story. And obviously just coming on a podcast anyway, you got to get clearance to do that because they want to know what the hell you're going to talk about. So there's that too. But how else can people be telling the story outside of the podcast? Because I mean, and still have some layer of insulation. What do you suggest that they do?
So that is very unfortunate about that story, because everyone in that department, I'm sure, knows that story now, and how many other people know. And they're like, yeah, we'd never
fucking say a word.
So I'll give you an example, and Greg kind of alluded to it. We need to start celebrating the post-traumatic growth. I now know sitting across from Jennifer and dealing with my demons was the most courageous thing I ever did. Not fucking the operations I've ever done, like whatever, fucking I'll do that. A hostage rescue, search warrant, whatever. Like, you sit across from Jennifer and have to lay your soul out, hang on, because it's tough. A lot of academies across the country, this is very important, but I'm just using an example. They'll have officers come in, been an officer-involved shooting. Maybe they've been shot in the line of duty. Maybe they fought through, killed the suspect, whatever it is. But from a standpoint of, what was that mindset like on that day of that event? How'd you fight through it? How'd you stay alive? How'd you do what you need to do? Right? Important. We need to have that. What does it look like in the academies if we have very influential people within agencies that have had the courage to come forward, deal with their shit, and are now still being successful? This is my story. So it's not Travis telling whatever, Louisville, Kentucky PD. They're like, yeah, Travis, that's cool. Now we want to hear from someone from our organization. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I think there's power in that story, and you are seeing it on the individual level, but our fucking organizations need to start celebrating it. Literally, and I'm not saying that lightly. I'm saying, like, we are putting them up on a pedestal. They dealt with their shit and they're still continuing with their career.
Who's being successful with this out there? I mean, outside of talk, like, are there departments out there that you've seen that have, maybe even after you've been through there, and they're like, oh shit, we got to change this, and they're at least trying, or they're doing something and they're doing a really good job at it? Is there anything to celebrate on that end?
Yeah, I can go, definitely. So we've had a couple organizations in Montana, some in Washington. I think this is a brilliant way to do things. They understand, they have accepted. Our people are not going to come through EAP like the county road workers might do it. They're just not going to do it.
Okay, hold on just a second. So, like, what you need as a first responder versus what the person working in the city office might need, are two different things. We are not the same kind of approach.
Exactly. And I would tell, if there's anybody listening to this, and maybe you're in a leadership position with whatever government agency you're a part of, and we fought this at times, and I've heard like in Mesa with our city manager, we can't give the police officers and firefighters this because the garbage man doesn't get that. We can't, I'm sorry, man, like, not everybody's the same. We don't deal with the same stresses, right? And you laugh, but we laugh. We're like, are you fucking kidding me?
What you just said is a metaphor for our fucking country right now.
Right.
But that is ridiculous.
So they realize this in these organizations, what they decided to do. One of them specifically, Brandon Sprangler, one of the guys I work with in Montana, an agency in Montana, what they've done is put him on retainer. And what I mean by that is every Thursday, Brandon dedicates to this department. Now all their county deputies and their corrections officers know, if I need to see Brandon, I bypass administration of the department. I call Brandon. Brandon, the only thing he does at the end of the month is give them numbers that he's treated. Just a bill. But what has been amazing...
Names and badge numbers are not attached.
But let me tell you what happened is the deputies, so many of them came forward to administration and were like, literally, like just praising them. Thank you. I never would have went. And now he is changing my life.
So they were anonymous going in, but named coming out, like self-identified.
So that's one of the things that our organization, we believe in that setup because it takes, it's like what TAC does. It's like gives you that confidentiality unless you choose to tell someone. And that has been brilliant. So I like that model. But I'm going to tell you, it's a hard sell for a lot of organizations because you're talking about money.
I was just going to say,
the money part of it can be an issue. But man, one guy told me one time in this profession, because there's always bitching about budget and all that. It's never really, truly a dollar and cent problem. It's a priority problem.
Oh, hell yeah. People do what they want to do.
Yep. The city, that I worked with always say, oh, we don't have this and that. Well, our union is very good. Like, well, this is how much money you have sitting in this fund over here. What is this for? So again, we can go all the way back to the numbers. If we have more police officers dying by their own hands than we do being killed and all other line of duty deaths, should this not be, I think it should be number one priority, if not top three. I know because you have recruitment and retention right now. How do we maintain our people? Which I think this all is intertwined. If I want to retain my good people, should I not help them figure out how to stay mentally resilient throughout the whole career? It all works together, man.
I have another question, and that is, why aren't we asking that question?
Asking about the priority? We do, man, but they don't want to answer it.
That's my point.
Yeah.
Like, why are they not answering? Not we here
looking
at the table.
Looking in the mirror.
Why are we, that being those decision makers that about budget or policy or whoever, chiefs and whatever, why are they not asking that question? Right. That's a bigger question that we, the collective we, all of us should be worried about and concerned with, particularly those people that are going to work every day and doing these jobs.
Right.
They should be asking that question. And I think that's a question they should be publicly asking. Why are we not putting more money into this? Going back to, again, you can have union groups or advocacy groups or whatever else, but it goes back to what you were saying. It really should be coming from the people that are doing the job, and that are currently.
And we have seen, I do believe, if you hear me speak, I talk about labor organizations or unions. I know from being a part of many contracts throughout my career, I was always worried about how much more money am I going to get, and are my benefits going to go up? Because that decides, like, did I really get a raise or not? Mm-hmm. Our unions need to get involved and start dealing with mental health. If the agency is not going to do it, then guess what? In our contract, we want 4 visits a year paid for our people, and we're going to pay them cash. And we've seen it. I've mentioned a couple organizations, the union got in their contract, we'll pay you $500 up to 4 times a year to go sit with a therapist. You can sit there and not say a word. You want a new gun? But we believe in this so much, we believe we're going to get through to you.
So 4 times a year, you're going to get $500 just for going. Mm-hmm. You just have to show proof that you went.
Yeah.
Okay, so that gives up the anonymity piece. But if everybody's on the same level playing field, does it matter? Because I could have gone and just sat there. I take my $500 and do whatever I want.
Because you could walk out and say, "Yeah, this is fucking bullshit. I'm trying to buy a new Glock, whatever."
Exactly. Straight to the gun shop, or to wherever, whatever floats your boat.
Or it could help someone.
That's exactly the point.
They can go in there with the mindset and be like, "Hey, I'm going to go get a new Glock. I'm saving up for it," or just a red dot sight because they're about the same price.
Yep.
And then you go sit in there and you sit across from someone like Jennifer, and she says something like, "It's okay. It's normal what you're going through," because she's had that training. She's had that experience with our community, and your department could spend $10,000 in a 6-month period. But if it gets one of your members help and prevents one suicide potentially, is that not a win? And one of the challenges that I've heard with doing the annual check-ins, the biannual check-ins, is chiefs and departments are scared to do more of this because it's an easier out to make a PTSD claim.
Yeah, you're also admitting there's a problem, right? Yeah. And as soon as you acknowledge the problem and then you don't do anything to fix it or address it, then you are being neglectful and you are then complicit, and then you then have that blood on your hands. And I heard what you said there about, like, you've never been a chief. Neither have I.
Yeah.
Like, I can't imagine, we talk about, I haven't had a chief sit in the chair, so I haven't been able to ask this question before. I don't know. But I imagine it's a pretty fucking hard job.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. They got a lot of liability in a lot of different ways. Right. They have to make some pretty big decisions and answers to some people, albeit it can be very disconnected from what's happening on the street. And obviously there's probably animosity from the street or from the top to or from the bottom from the top, and sometimes from the top to the bottom when things are going well. I want to respect and understand this, but at the same time, like, what's more important than you're talking about? This goes back to the talking all the time. What's more important than officer safety?
Exactly.
Officer safety public safety, right? Like these are the two things we're weighing the most, right? And then obviously, what do the statistics say about how much crime we're fighting or things are getting better? Like if you want to see stats, like that 54%, fucking mind blowing. That's a huge stat. If you started to see that number move, then that would almost justify, okay, we are doing the right thing. And then you don't have to worry about it. Like then you can advocate for the funding. I don't know. I'll get off that.
Yeah, and I think with the officer safety and the public safety, right? That's in the mission statement for every department. Like if you read their mission statement, it's public safety, everything. Well, you want the best of the best protecting the public. Right? Look, you don't want someone who is unable to get resources, their cup is almost full, who's extremely frustrated, irritable, where like we have to make a split-second decision. You have to perform simple tasks under high amounts of stress. And if you're not in a position where you can actually make the right conscious decision, that in turn is a risk for our public.
So I'll take this kind of a step further, and this is going to be unpopular. People are not going to like what I'm saying because I have no skin in the game. I've never done what you two guys have done. Each one of you have done different things, but I've never done it, and I'm never going to. But I'll say this. If I'm on one of those teams, if I'm on your team, Travis, I'm just going to be really blunt about this. If I'm on your team and I knew that you were not sleeping, that you were drinking too much, like you were fatigued all the time, and I understand physiology and human biology. I understand how that impacts a lot of things: decision-making skills, accuracy, going back to decision-making judgment calls, reaction times, all of those kind of things. Man, I'm pissed. Mm-hmm. I'm pissed if you're not handling your shit.
Right.
And I'm also concerned for you, but I'm pissed at you if you're not handling your shit, in two kinds of ways. And you're not the person, so I'm going to step back from there. And if my mom has to call you because some shitbag has broken into her house and is holding her and my dad hostage or whatever else, and you show up and you haven't been taking care of business, I got to be honest, you're not the guy I want there.
Right.
I want the dude that's handling his business, that's facing the stuff, that's getting the right amount of sleep, that's working out regularly, all the things. That's who I want to be. I want to be showing up. So I mean, just kind of looking at it from a different perspective as somebody from on the inside, like, are you the cop you want showing up to your wife's house, your kid's house, your mom's house? And I don't mean just from, we talk about this a lot on the show, just from the fitness perspective or the health perspective, from all of the things, the holistically, like, are you doing the things you need to do alongside, not in spite of, all of the things that you have to handle that are on your plate already? And I'm not saying it's an easy task or whatever else. There's a lot of things in that pie chart of things that you got to handle on a regular basis. But I think, going back to the inside and looking at your buddy standing next to you, like, is my boy really good?
Right.
Like, is he good? Like, are you good? Yeah. Like, for real? Because I don't think you're good. And I think it's how you handle it. Like, you could be handling it maybe with the like, stop being a pussy, pull your shit together and let's go. Like, that's because that's what we do. Or you could be like, hey man, this is not cool. Let's figure out a way to find a solution to this problem.
Right. Yeah. And I will tell you, that's a failure. Because we would say, like, for instance, on our team, we'd be doing hostage rescue runs. Someone would fuck up. Be like, are you the dude that you want to do a hostage rescue on your family? Are you good? Are you training like
in that context? Right.
So but I will tell you, man, how it has changed. Like with our team, like there's 7 or 8 dudes now seeing Jennifer Cooper on a regular basis, and now they're recommending it because now they are seeing this team that we're all about working out, we're all about being extremely proficient with firearms. How are you good? And I talk about this intentional conversations. I'm not this dude. Like, I believe in small circles. You have some people you just need to be there for. Like, Greg and I have a relationship now. We need to fucking vent about some shit. We do it with each other. Or like my buddy that's been through some stuff back in Arizona, just checked in with him yesterday. Hey, you all good? Yep, I'm fine, man. What's going on? I'm like, hey, just checking. Are you good, brother? Like, how you sleeping? He's just moved in a new house. Like, I know that's stressful, man. Anything with you and the wife that's going on? No, man, we've worked it out. We've taken some off time. Those are the types of conversations, instead of just saying, you good? As you're walking by in the fucking locker room or throwing on your gun belt and you're running out to the next call, whatever it is, That's what we've done in the past because it hasn't been cool. Like, no, man, I'm seeing something. You have the courage to say, I'm not seeing that you're good. So let's fucking talk.
You know, that's the interesting part about what talk does. And maybe just kind of recognizing that just like when you may have suicidal ideation, a suicidal ideation is much different than actually being suicidal.
Correct.
Not everybody might need therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes all they need is a fucking conversation.
Right.
To know that they're not alone in this, or that they're not weird, or they're not different, or whatever else. And that's what you got. What I heard you just, that's not a therapy session when you call great. People may call it that.
Exactly.
I go to the gym for therapy, or
right.
Whatever. They might call it that, but it could be therapeutic.
Mm-hmm.
It's not therapy. But sometimes all they need is a conversation. They just need to talk to somebody that kind of understands. And that person is not, again, the person that you're talking to doesn't necessarily have to be trained, but they know where you're coming from, and they're not your wife.
Mm-hmm.
They're not your husband. They're not that buddy at work who is not a trained therapist, or is going to tell you what they want to hear, or is like just trying to get their way out of the conversation, or navigate it differently to make everybody feel more comfortable. It's just a conversation. And so you guys are doing that in a way. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. And I think one of the problems, like Travis mentioned, is you walk by and you say, "Yo, what's up, Scott? You good?" "Yeah, I'm good." Because God forbid you said, "Hey, I'm actually not. Do you have a moment to talk?" You're like, "Yo, dude, I got to go do a follow-up on this 10851 case, the stolen vehicle. Can we set up a time later to talk?" Like we're not prepared for that answer. We prepare ourselves for, "Scott, you good?" "Yep, good." "What's up, brother?" "All right, cool. Let's have a good shift." And we see these signs. And there are so many times where suicides occur where it's like, I saw the signs.
Yeah.
That was a sign. Why didn't I say anything? Why?
Because there was a pre-programmed response.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And that's with the wearing the mask. So you bring up a great point where it's like, you don't necessarily need to go to therapy, in my opinion. And that's why at Talk, we came up with the buddy program. So I talked about it yesterday in the presentation, and it's on our PowerPoints, but it's on our website, and it's over 30 people now, and it's grown. It's great, where there's dispatchers on there. There's deputy coroners that are on there that all they do is go scoop up dead bodies. There are parents of first responders on there. Everybody in the community is on there. And if I do a podcast with them, their podcast is linked to their buddy program or their file. So there's a photo, email address, and a bio. And if you're struggling and you're a dispatcher, right? And you're taking all these 911 calls and you're tired of the screaming and giving CPR chest compressions over the phone to a wife who's doing CPR on her husband, you can go to the website. You can find another dispatcher on there and be like, hey, Taylor, I saw that you're a fellow dispatcher. I just need someone to talk to. I've been on for 2 years as a dispatcher. I listened to your podcast that you did. Do you have time to talk?
And this is anonymous.
Anonymous. It's just between you and that buddy. So that's just another resource.
I'm going to come back to the resources because you guys are doing some other cool stuff. But one of the things that I've learned and I've taken away from hanging around you guys and hanging around Talk so much is the family atmosphere that's created. There's a deep level of trust, but also like a connection and a commitment to it. I mean, it's a volunteer organization. So people are not getting, people are not making $1 million bucks, doing these things. Right. But the point of this is like, everybody kind of understands one another and sees one another as a trusted resource, rather than the other thing that we spent so much time describing, Travis, which was like, I don't trust you. I don't see you as a resource. I see you as a potential danger or threat to me as the therapist part of the EAP program, because you're going to send up the red flags up the flagpole, and I'm going to lose my gun, my badge, my position, my dignity. All these things are going to be gone, which is so much different in this situation where everybody's like, of course, man, like it's totally fine. How can we help you with this today? This goes back to like cities and departments and agencies and whatever, governments, just layering one level of liability on top of the other. And you've taken all of the liability out of it. There's no risk to doing any of this, not for anybody. Only you have taken on the responsibility and taking on the liability of we can't fuck this up, because the reality of is if we do, the consequences could be disastrous. Versus the other end of that spectrum is like, no, we're doing everything that we can so that to tick a box, so that if the result is disastrous, we can say we did something.
Yeah.
Which is much, much different. And then you mentioned resources and how you're bringing those resources in, and it's people, right? And that are giving their time. But there's also like some technology that you guys have been using, which I think is cool. Like, it's innovative. And so maybe we talk about that a little bit, just like in terms of how people connect in today's world. Because sending an email, like doing research, like on a phone or on a computer, going to a website, searching a site, looking through bios, reading through all that stuff. I mean, that sounds very good. And I do that. I'm an old guy, but not everybody kind of functions like that on the day-to-day when they're moving from call to call, trying to get that sleep, trying to get that workout in, trying to have that family time. How else can they get this information, and how can they get connected?
Yeah. So we have, as of now, we have essentially everything on our app. So
The app.
Yeah. So if you have an iPhone, or I like to make it a joke and say the Android users that fuck up every group text, we even have the app for you, and it's available for you. And so through the app, it's literally, it was created by me and then Kelsey, and we were able to gear it towards what I would want if I were to reach out for help or have a confidential place where it's first responders and military, that community aspect where you can trust one another, and you have the social media aspect. You have vetted podcasts that are only added by me. So like, I'm not throwing anybody on there that's far left. If you're a police officer, like I know what you want to listen to,
fair point.
resources.
Yep. Fair point.
You're on there. There's nutritional stuff. There's fitness stuff. There's other resources. And it's all about bringing all of these resources into one app. And so through the app, you have audio rooms, which are similar to podcasts. Therapists can use them and talk a little bit about themselves and explain why they are culturally competent. So then you can go to the website and be like, hey, after listening to Destiny in her audio room, I'm going to go to her, So, and then through the app, you have the option to go into incognito mode. So we have a social media aspect where it's similar to like an Instagram, where as Greg Grogan, I could post a picture of me at the shooting range and be like, hey, awesome day at the range with the boys, having fun. But if I need some support, I can click that incognito mode button, and I could post a picture or just a caption and be like, hey, murder, suicide, didn't really get a debrief. Does anybody have any idea of how I may be feeling in the next 24, 48 hours? Any resources in the state of Arizona? Anybody been through something similar that I can talk to? Help, essentially, right? And I know Travis has been on there and seen this firsthand, and it'll say @anonymous, and we see all these comments, and it's like, hey, here's something that you can expect. If you need anything, DM me through the app, and then you can talk.
Yeah.
It's pretty powerful. I mean, because you're sort of attacking this thing, from all angles. Part of this is what I said earlier, and that is taking personal responsibility for getting help. And, I've heard people even on your, actually, the podcast you did with Kurt, who's sort of a local guy here, was talking about, hey, you have to want to get help. And can you guys talk about that just in terms of that piece, like where you got to, Travis, and maybe where you deal with other folks, Greg, just like, what is it? Like, you have to take personal responsibility here, sure. Right? Can you talk about taking the step?
Yeah, man. First of all, like when I do my full day presentations, I tell everyone at the end of the day, Travis did not just give you the excuse book to say to your family, well, I just heard this presentation. I have PTS or PTSD. This is why I'm a fucking asshole. This is why I drink too much. At the end of the day, I had a lot of failures. I placed my career in general above my own personal health when I knew something was wrong. I placed my team loyalty above my own personal health, which all goes entwined with my family. And I wasn't taking those steps. You have a responsibility here. If you're listening to this message right now, or you hear us speak, now you know. There's no more. We've told you, like, I'm not bullshitting you. Like, and we have a clinician telling you, yeah, these are things, and let's deal with them, because I would much rather, as soon as that, whether it's 2 weeks on the job, 6 months on the job, or 10 years, if you've seen some of these things, go get some help, man. Step up to the plate. I'm telling you, and there's many people out there, again, right now, fuck the organizations, keep them out of it, that us as individuals are saying, no, like this is courageous and we get you. Like yesterday, there were some people that came up and talked to me afterwards. And even like one of them in the middle of some shit right now, and they've done EMDR therapy, they're getting some help. But they said, man, hearing you speak, like it even gave me a little bit more validation. Like, I get you and you get me. Like you and I could sit down. No, of course, we haven't been on the exact same calls, but everything I was saying, he's like, yep, I get that. Oh, shit. Yep. I know what Travis is talking about there, that validation. But you have this personal responsibility, man. Take care of your shit. Be that cop, but more important that you want to be, but more importantly, be that human being you want to be. And I wasn't. I was not. It changed me. A first responder and a military, our military personnel, those are the only professions, quite frankly, that probably change your personality. Like you can start, and if you look back, I know from 1996 to 2022, I was a way different person. And I know we all change, right? Human beings, you change throughout the course of life, personal shit and all that. But literally changed my personality to where when I was in the darkest times, I wasn't happy anymore. I didn't like to joke around anymore. I was just like, fuck life. I woke up angry. That wasn't me. Like, that's not how I was. So, but you have the responsibility.
I think that's an important message. And it's interesting what you just said there about what you're putting in front of yourself and the things that you should be taking care of, and you're choosing not to at some point. Now, I'm not saying it's easy to make that choice, but that's a reality that you're choosing to go to work instead of deal with your stuff. You're choosing to take that. Again, there are a lot of things that go on there physiologically and psychologically, so I'm not trying to minimize any of that or invalidate it.
No, for sure.
But at the same time, at the end of the day, like it is your responsibility. I mean, you guys have hung in there with me through a lot of things. I had so many questions today, and I wanted to hear kind of the interaction, with what you guys are doing, to think where this started, at this table a couple of years ago now in our initial conversation, where talk is now, where, you fit into this thing, Travis, and the messages that are going around out there. In terms of kind of wrapping it up and just leaving people with some stuff. I mean, there's a lot of stuff to process and unpack on this thing for people that are listening. But what do you want to leave them with? Like, what's the important thing that you want them to walk away with today? And if whether they're that first responder or military member or military first responder, whatever, that is struggling, the wife of that person, the husband of that person, the mom, the sister, the brother, the whatever. Like, what are the message? What are the nuggets you can leave them with beyond what you've already provided today?
Well, for me, just like, when I'm speaking to a group of people, I tell them my number one goal is the individual. I want you to hear it's okay to not be okay. And I need you to do that for yourself. I think Greg and I were talking last night. We sometimes, this profession, I don't know if it's a cockiness or whatever, to where we think we may be like, yeah, we've really changed some things in our organizations. They really need me. I tell you, the day after you left, there's going to be people that forget your fucking name. We would make a joke on our team when one of our senior guys would be retiring. We'd like, yeah, they got 2 months out. Let's start going through their gear. What do you got? I need that. And it's like, see ya. Like
before the body's even cold.
Yeah, because we had an operation the next day. So, and I think you're seeing more of that sentiment in generals and law enforcement, where we struggle a little bit. Like, hey, are we being supported? And you'll hear some comments. People are like, yeah, I need to look out for me. But they're not necessarily talking about the mental health side. No, I'm telling you the mental health side. Take care of yourself. I don't care what your organization's doing. You should be in it to make sure you're healthy. And then whoever your loved ones are, if you're married, if you have a partner, if you're your extended family, then that turns into having a good relationship with them. And then you work on that stuff. And then for the organization, you will just naturally be good. Because if you deal with all this other shit on the backside, I'm going to go out and show up to work. Not that there's going to be some fucking hellish days. We can't get around that. You're going to have scars. But you will be better for it. Take care of yourself, man. And I wish I was the whole thing, company man. I was always a company man. I'd hear these salty old guys are like, fuck this department. They don't care about you. I'd be like, man, you're fucking soured. Like, you suck. Like, why are you still here? And that's not, you need to understand that from a standpoint of they maybe had the right message and weren't doing it the right way with their attitude.
Sure.
But I'm telling you, you are a number. I got an ID number. I got a badge number. At the end of the day, you're gone.
Job.
You know, you walk out the door, and a lot of retirees fall into this thing of like, yep, when I walk out, like your gym out there, okay, I've got all this weight on me from all the shit every day I come into work. But when I walk out on that last day, it's all going to leave.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Like, if you're not good then, what makes you think you're going to be good?
It gets worse, man.
Yeah, you mentioned even the decision making we're making about, more benefits or, getting, certain shifts or whatever. How does that equate to your retirement and all that stuff? You're thinking that way long term, and you think you're going to be good when this is all like, it all just stops. Like, I've seen the numbers of people that retire and how long they last after, and it's not very long.
Yeah. I just saw a number today. What is it? 20 years less than the average civilian life expectancy as a first responder.
Yeah. And it's like 1 to 2 years in is where you see most of your suicides.
So that transition.
After retirement.
So you think you're just going to like not go to work one day because all the stuff that you just said is going to be realized in that 1 to 2 years, and that's what you're going to be dealing with.
And then
you were just a number.
Yeah. And then when you retire, you still have all of that, but you don't have the team to go back to like Travis did, where you think everything's going to be okay. Like he mentioned, he was like, hey, all I got to do is get back to the team. I'll be good. You don't have your team. You don't even have the peer support team because you're retired now. Even if you didn't trust it before, now that you're retired, you're so limited on the amount of resources that you have. You don't even have that buddy to pull up next to your beat partner and shoot the shit with.
Yep. It's probably a lonely world.
It is, man.
I can't imagine how lonely it is to feel like you're on that island all by yourself. And again, to hear from somebody, that knows like it's okay to not be okay, man.
Right.
Like, I can't imagine what that feels like to be on the island, and then also to hear that message, and then what it feels like coming out the other side.
Yeah.
I can only try, and it sounds pretty good, right? While some of the process might be pretty shitty,
it
sounds pretty good to then come out the other side and be able to live your life in the way you want to live it. I don't know, Greg. What do you want to leave them with? I mean, how do you follow that shit up? Because
I don't 100%. And this is kind of how it goes with his presentations, because I'm fortunate enough where I get to sit down and record a video where he throws at the end of his presentations, and where it's essentially he talks, gets everybody like, hey, you know what? Yep, 100%. And then I come in and I talk about the Overwatch Collective, give a brief summary of who I am, because that's important in our community. They need to know that it's not like some nonprofit that's founded by someone that is not a first responder service member. So to lay that out there so they know exactly who I am, my experience, that I'm still an active police officer, and then to go into our process, our stats that we have while maintaining complete confidentiality, it really does leave them with like, hey, here's a resource. It's on you now. Like, if you want to get the help, you have no fucking excuse because the Overwatch Collective is there. So, that, and then, so like, if you have not heard of the Overwatch Collective before, it's a 501c3 nonprofit and a podcast. And the mission is to create the smoothest and most simple and confidential process to get our first responder military community to culturally competent therapists with financial assistance available. So we cover 100% for the first 3 therapy sessions and then go to a tiered system. As of now, we spend $125,000 on therapy. We've connected over 160 people to our therapists, and we have not broken confidentiality once. So if you're listening to this, you're struggling, you're like, I don't want to go to the VA. I don't want to go through the EAP or peer support. Reach out to Scott, reach out to Travis, reach out to me, and we can get you the help you need.
Well, I appreciate you guys, and I just want to acknowledge something. I mean, you guys are traveling. Greg, you're still working full time. This takes a lot of energy, like the giving and the receiving of energy, both in the positive stuff, the really sobering stuff, and in anything in between. I commend you guys for the work and the efforts that you're putting in. I'm a huge fan. This isn't an easy job, but it's interesting. You guys feel, when I hear you talk about the passion for what the job that you did, but also like I can feel and hear the passion for the jobs that you're doing outside of that too. And I know that's an exhausting prospect sometimes. I'm sure sometimes it's really, really tough, but the way you guys continue to handle yourself, continue to tell this message or send the message and trying to help people is, I think is pretty special. And, I'm sure you hear people tell you, thank you, kind of all the time, but my hat's off to you guys.
Thanks, brother.
If there's anything that I can do to, continue to send the message, spread the message, bring people together, in whatever way, from this moving forward and into the future, all you got to do is ask. And for anybody that's listening out there, in terms of getting in touch with these guys, like what's the best way to reach out, maybe find more about you or get in touch with you, Travis?
Yeah, for my website, they can go to myarenallc.com. We have events on there. They can actually contact me through there. And then my Instagram account is my_.arena. I answer messages on there. That's one thing I make it a point. Like you contact me, you're going to hear from me. If you're gonna call me, text me first, tell me who you are, you need to talk. I will walk alongside you. If you just need to chat, feel some things out. If you're looking for that, we need this in our organization. That's the way to get a hold of me. We'd love to help you, man. I mean, with Greg and I, it's a passion for sure.
Yep.
And we just, it comes down to, it's a very core of it. We want to save lives, and that's what we're trying to do, man. So yeah, get a hold of us. And
Yeah, same thing. Type in the Overwatch Collective and you'll find us. Pretty fucking simple. We try to make it as easy as possible to get help. I guarantee you.
You guys have done a pretty good job with that SEO. Yeah. The Overwatch Collective pops right up. And again, if there's anything that I can do, if people need to reach out to me, I'm happy to put you guys in touch with these guys and the people that they work with. Come across some really great ones over the day. So thanks for your time and your energy today, guys. I appreciate you.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Scott.
Thanks, man.